Naruto, the Fuinjutsu professor of the Ninja Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, The Legendary Super Genin. 8 Gates Ninjutsu. Open. 8 Gates Ninjutsu. Open. My guy has practiced the 8 Gates Ninjutsu for many years, so opening 2 gates in a row is effortless. Although he has not changed much on the surface. But whether it is Ashuma's combat power detector or the scrolling Kai's hand, you can see a large amount of chakra emerging from the meridians in his head, and the combat power value is jumping up crazily. Wow, this is amazing. The combat power has exceeded 10 obitos in an instant, 12, 13, and it is still increasing. Ashuma began to explain. Obito, please don't treat me as a combat unit. At this time, Xia Yan explained. Everyone, watch carefully. Mr. Dai first opens the open gate to remove the restrictions on the brain area and gain 100% control over the body, so that he can consume energy to increase strength and speed. Then the rest gate removes the fatigue restrictions and squeezes the body to quickly recover physical strength to prepare for the formal entry into the 8 gates of ninjutsu. Mr. Dai, you can continue the demonstration. Mike Dai said. It may be a little dangerous next, please step back. Although everyone was puzzled, they also stepped back a few steps. Mike Dai nodded when he saw this, then waved his hands down and shouted, 8 gates of ninjutsu life gate, open. The next moment his skin suddenly turned red, and green chakra flames gushed out of his body, causing his hair to fly wildly. Beep beep beep, hey, hey, hey. The combat power has exceeded 1,000 inches an instant, 1,100, 1,200, Ashuma pressed the detector and exclaimed, Akai, are you sure your father is just an ordinary genin? At this time, Akai was also stunned, and his hands holding the scroll were shaking. It was really that the contrast between the father in front of him and the usual father was too great, and he couldn't react for a while. Xia Yan continued to explain. After the 3rd gate of the life gate is opened, the body will begin to produce a large amount of chakra, thereby greatly improving its own speed and strength. Everyone can see the green chakra on Mr. Dai's body. That is the seam caused by the chakra that cannot be contained in his meridians escaping from the acupuncture points. It is not difficult to imagine how much chakra is flowing in his meridians now. Wow! The students exclaimed in awe. Xia Yan continued, the following gates are essentially the same as the life gates. They all remove restrictions and increase the flow of chakra in the body, thus gaining powerful strength in a short period of time. However, since the 4th gate will inevitably cause damage to the body, we can only demonstrate it here. Then Xia Yan turned his head and looked at Mike Dai. Mr. Dai, you can stop now. However, Mike Dai seemed not to hear him and shouted again. 8 gates of ninjutsu, open. 8 gates of ninjutsu, open. Xia Yan. Question mark, boom. Boom. 2 consecutive airwaves exploded with Mike Dai as the center, knocking all the students to the ground. It was as if the chakra flames of substance wrapped him up, and his face became more and more ferocious. Beep, beep, beep. Ashuma, who was sitting on the ground, looked at the numbers in the combat power detector with an expression of disbelief. It has already broken through 1,000, 1,800, 2,500, 3,200, how is it possible? It is still improving. How many obitos can this beat? It is obviously not the strength of an ordinary genin. Could this be the legendary super genin? Akai, who was also sitting on the ground, stared at his father in a daze, tears streaming down unconsciously. To be honest, although he respected his father very much and always practiced according to his father's instructions, but deep in his heart, there was still a trace of doubt. After all, his father was just a 10,000-year-old genin who was often laughed at. But he was not discouraged by this, but worked harder. He wanted to prove that his father was not wrong through his own success. Let his father's passionate youth continue. However, he only now realized that his father's youth had already blossomed and borne fruit, and he didn't need his protection at all. For a moment, shame and joy mixed together, making Akai cry even harder. Xia Yan used his hands to block the turbulent wind pressure, raised his voice and said to Mike Dai, Mr. Dai, don't hesitate, the demonstration to this point is enough. Mike Dai turned his head and looked at him, and his signature smile appeared on his face like a red devil. Teacher Xia Yan, I already understand the real reason why you want me to demonstrate to you. although it's not worth mentioning. But let everyone see that even if I am a 10,000-year-old genin, through nearly 20 years of hard work, I can also obtain the strength close to Chunin in a short time. Xia Yan. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Although you guessed correctly, isn't it a bit strange to position yourself? But before he could speak, he saw Might Die with his hands crossed in front of him. 8 gates of ninjutsu Kageman, open. The next moment, Ashuma's screams rang out on the training ground. A moment later, on the bench next to the training ground, Kushina had just put a band-aid on the corner of Ashuma's eye and said unhappily, "It's just a little skin broken. What were you yelling about just now?" Ashuma looked embarrassed, but he was muttering in his heart, "Come and try next time. What will happen if something explodes in front of you?" Not far away, Xia Yan was holding the wreckage of the combat power detector with a speechless face. Might Die and Kai, who had returned to normal, were bowing and apologizing repeatedly. "Teacher Xia Yan, I'm sorry, I actually broke such a valuable machine of yours." Then he gritted his teeth and said, "I will compensate you with my body. In the future, I will use all my salary as a waiter to pay back this money until it is paid off. Do you think it's okay?" Xia Yan waved his hand and said, "In fact, the key parts are not damaged. Only a few connecting parts need to be replaced. It's not worth much. More importantly, Mr. Dai, you should understand what I said before, that you are actually very strong. After all, my machine can withstand the amount of chakra at the level of the 5 kg. Might Dai stood up straight after hearing this, looked at his hands, and smiled bigly. "It still doesn't feel real. To be honest, I was just bragging when I said I could have the strength close to that of a genin in a short time. I'm blushing. Didn't you see that, Mr. Xia Yan? Just from the way it looked, only a ghost could see that." At this time, Akai asked with a surprised face, "Teacher, is it possible that my father is stronger than the Okage with only 6 gates?" "That's not the case." Xia Yan smiled. "Like I said just now, in a battle at the level of Kage, combat power is only one of the factors that affect the outcome. To be honest, in front of such a cunning and experienced ninja like the 3rd generation, even if Mr. Dai opens all 8 gates, if he can't defeat him by surprise, he will probably be dragged to death by the 3rd generation in the end." Xia Yan's words did not mean to save the face of the 3rd generation. After all, the power of the 8 gates of ninjutsu depends on the caster himself. Judging from the performance of Might Die just now, the gap between his 8 gates of ninjutsu and the future Akai is really not small. He has not really reached the Super Kage level of breaking all methods with one force. As expected, people cannot be generalized. Even if they are father and son, Might Dai's 8 gates ninja formation and Kai's 8 gates ninja formation are different concepts. "Kai, you idiot." Might Dai suddenly punched Kai and sent him flying. "Dad, what did I say wrong again?" Kai sat up on the ground, covering his face and wondering. Might Dai said with great sorrow, "Kai, how many times have I said this? The real victory is not to defeat the strong, but to be able to always protect the most important things in your life." "Dad, I'm sorry, I'm just happy that Dad's efforts have not been in vain," Kai said with tears streaming down his face and sniffling. "Idiot," Might Die also shed 2 lines of tears. "Efforts will never let us down. What you said is too rude to efforts, and even if I don't become stronger, as long as Kai, you are still running forward on the road of youth, my efforts will definitely not be in vain. Dad." Kai. At this time, Xia Yan had quietly left, and heard the sound of Might father and son crying behind him, revealing a helpless smile. As expected, only a hot-blooded idiot like this has the chance to master the 8 gates ninjutsu. It's not suitable for him. Chapter 77. If you want to be rich, build roads first. When Xia Yan walked to the training ground, he saw other students studying the Meridian Scroll. He clapped his hands, gathered everyone together, and then said, "You have just seen the power of the 8 gates, right? No, I think this should be considered as exceeding the task." The students nodded excitedly, expressing their amazement at the power of the 8 gates. Ashuma, who had already returned to the team, asked impatiently, "Teacher, do we have to learn the 8 gates in the future?" The 3 boys looked at Xia Yan with expectant eyes, but the girls were a little resistant to the appearance of using the 8 gates and were not so interested. Xia Yan smiled slightly when he heard this. "Of course, it's impossible." The boys' faces suddenly pulled, while the girls breathed a sigh of relief, but also felt a little regretful. Xia Yan spread his hands. "Not to mention that we're a sealing technique research group, not a physical technique research group. More importantly, practicing the 8 gates is not as simple as you think. No, it should be said that it is 100 times more difficult. Because the premise of using the 8 gates is to build the body and meridians into the most solid container through years of overload training, so as to minimize the damage to the body meridians caused by the violent chakra in the body after opening the 8 gates. So practicing the 8 gates basically means giving up all other training paths and spending all your time on cruel training every day with no end in sight. And even if you train your body well, it will inevitably cause damage to your body when using this forbidden technique, and it may even cause disability, and you will lose the qualification to be a ninja from then on. Are you really prepared for this? After saying that, Xia Yan glanced at everyone with a playful look. The students all looked embarrassed, lowered their heads and kept silent, and immediately gave up the idea of practicing the 8 gates. Then everyone couldn't help but look at the white father and son who were still crying with their heads in their hands. With such strict training conditions, no one except the father and son of the rare beast could have mastered the forbidden technique. Then everyone heard teacher Xia Yan say, "However, we can still refer to the idea of this technique." Everyone listened carefully again. Xia Yan said, "As I said just now, the principle of practicing the 8 gates of ninja is to allow the body and meridians to gradually withstand more chakra through years of overload training. This also means that meridians, like other parts of the body, can be strengthened through training. And this also answers Ebisu's question to a certain extent. The qualifications of a ninja are not completely determined by birth, and acquired training also occupies a very important position." Ebisu, Lin and Hong, 3 students with less chakra, suddenly brightened up. Xia Yan then snapped his fingers. Several 1-to-1 sized 3-dimensional meridian models appeared beside him. "These are the meridian data I got from the task I sent out a few days ago to some ninjas wearing these training suits." He walked to the nearest meridian model projection and said, "First, let's take a look at the characteristics of this person's meridian system." The students came forward curiously and circled around the meridian model. At first glance, it seemed to be no different from the meridian system diagrams you usually see. However, Ling quickly discovered something by comparing several models. She pointed to the head of the meridian model with some hesitation and said, "Teacher Xia Yan, are the meridians near his mouth thicker than those of ordinary people?" Xia Yan smiled and nodded. "Yes, normally, the meridians near the hands, feet and mouth of a ninja are more developed. But the meridians of this ninja are even thicker than usual." Everyone came closer to take a look and found that the meridians there were indeed thicker than those in the hands and feet. This is because this ninja's specialty is the Great Fireball technique. Xia Yan explained. The key to this technique is to gather chakra from the mouth to the chest, change its properties, and then exhale it in one breath. And this ninja has been using this ninjutsu for many years while working in a barbecue restaurant as a side job, so he has trained the meridians in the relevant parts to be extremely tough and strong. Everyone suddenly realized, only Obito was a little speechless. What did this guy use the Uchiha clan's Great Fireball technique for? Xia Yan then walked to the next meridian model projection and pointed to the model's hand and said, "In the same way, this is a meridian model of a medical ninja who is good at using chakra scalpels. It is easy to see that the chakra meridians in his hands are also thicker than usual." Everyone nodded to show their understanding. Then Xia Yan introduced the meridian models one by one, allowing everyone to see the differences in the meridian systems of different types of ninjas. After watching, Might and his son just finished crying and came over together. Xia Yan and Might nodded and snapped their fingers. Then another meridian model projection appeared next to him. But this time, without him saying anything, everyone could see the difference in this model. It felt a circle larger than other meridian models. Xia Yan also explained at the right time. "I think it's easy for everyone to see that although this meridian model doesn't have particularly thick parts like the others, but because it is well developed as a whole, the amount of chakra, that is, the combat power, is far higher than other types. And this is the meridian system that Mr. Dai has trained through years of practicing the 8 gates." Everyone was a little surprised when they heard this, and couldn't help but look at Might Dai with admiration. The teacher's explanation just now made them know that all those ninjas had to go through years of repeated training to train the corresponding parts of the meridian so thick. And to train the meridians of the whole body like this, what kind of hard training did Akai's father go through? Being looked at like this, Might Dai scratched his head and felt a little embarrassed. And it was also that first time that Akai saw his father being admired by others, and he couldn't help but rub his nose and grin. Xia Yan continued to explain. "From these meridian models we can see that, without discussing the changes in nature, the practice of ninjutsu and the practice of the 8 gates or physical skills are actually very similar. They all use repeated training to widen and strengthen the meridians. It's just that ninjutsu actively guides the chakra to exercise some meridians, while the 8 gates exercises both the body and the meridian system comprehensively. In fact, many times the power of ninjutsu was increased not because of sudden enlightenment, but simply because of enough practice to heighten the corresponding meridians. It's just like the road on the ground. In fact, there was no road on the ground. When more people walked on it, it became a road. Ebisu. Teacher, what you said makes sense. Who said that? Xia Yan. Of course I said that. Everyone cast admiring glances. Xia Yan got back to the point and said, so, to put it bluntly, this is what ninja training is all about. Although many books make it confusing, in fact, what we do is the hard work of building roads. If you want to be rich, you must first build roads. This is also true for ninja training. In fact, many ninjas have also realized this. However, they are limited by the fact that they cannot see their own meridians, and they are worried that their meridians will be damaged if they mess around, so they can only train by repeating the roots of the ninjutsu they know, and they cannot take care of all the meridians. But you who have training suits and meridian scrolls are different. Because you can clearly see the condition of your meridians, you can develop targeted training and continuously widen and strengthen the meridian system throughout the body under safe conditions. In terms of specific operations, we will use a strategy of physical training and actively using chakra to widen the meridians in parallel, and strive to develop an efficient and safe meridian training method. In this way, no matter which direction you develop in the future, this developed and strong meridian system will help you lay the most solid foundation. Therefore, the name of this project is called the Foundation Building Plan. After listening to Teacher Xia Yan's plan, everyone was very excited and felt that it was very feasible. I didn't expect that learning the sealing technique would also give me a foundation building package. It's a good deal. Still, only Obito was a little speechless. It goes without saying that the Hyuga clan can see the meridians. Although the Sharingan cannot directly see the meridians, it can still see the flow of chakra. So the method that Teacher Xia Yan mentioned has actually been used in the Uchiha clan for a long time. It's just that only geniuses can get it. Is Teacher Xia Yan going against the eye technique family? As a member of the Uchiha clan who often copies other people's ninjutsu and taijutsu, Obito finally understands the feelings of those victims. Next, Xia Yan let everyone move freely, and then analyze the characteristics of their own meridian system based on what he just said, and make a plan. Because Xia Yan just drew so many big cakes, everyone's enthusiasm for studying their own meridian system was high. It was not until the sun went down that everyone reluctantly changed out of the training clothes that they had hated before, and ended the first research group activity. Xia Yan was looking at a pile of tights that smelled of sweat, and fell into deep thought. Washing machines are still rare these days, so it seems that I need to invent a technique that can wash clothes. The hard vortex water blade seems to be a reference, but before that, no. 3 can only be wrong. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 78. Discussion. The next morning, in the yard behind that Keenan tavern, 2 after images, 1 white and 1 green, were fighting fiercely. They fought back and forth, and the battlefield spread all over the yard. In the collisions and confrontations, the ground walls collapsed and cracked from time to time, and the cracks spread like spider webs. Might Dai, wearing a green tights, was wrapped in a layer of green flames, and was firmly in the upper hand. He was like a green flash, relying on the advantage of speed, attacking the opponent from all directions. And Xia Yan on the opposite side was not without the ability to fight back. In each attack, Xia Yan would set up a small white barrier in the direction of Might Dai's attack. Although he would be easily penetrated every time, the moment of delay was enough to even out the speed difference between the two, allowing Xia Yan and Might Dai to have a back and forth. Might Dai couldn't get him down for a long time, so he said, "Teacher Xia Yan, I'm going to speed up. Daemon, open." After saying that, his aura soared, his speed reached the extreme, and he disappeared in front of Xia Yan in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly appeared behind Xia Yan and punched hard with his right fist. Xia Yan, who had a small map, naturally knew Might Dai's location a long time ago. However, Might Dai had just opened Daemon, and his speed had exceeded the limit of Xia Yan's body's reaction. Even with the delay of the barrier shield, he couldn't completely avoid this attack. It seems that only the move can be used. Xia Yan's eyes suddenly stern, and he reacted in a flash. The next moment, A white flag appeared above Xia Yan's head, fluttering without wind. And Might Dai's fist also stopped before touching the barrier shield stacked 3 layers behind Xia Yan. Then the green aura on his body gradually dissipated. Xia Yan also breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. Sure enough, no one can defeat me before I surrender. This white flag was a surrender signal that he and Might Dai agreed on, so as to avoid getting hurt. It had a similar function to a safe word. You're lost again, Mr. Dai. Your combat skills have improved very quickly. Xia Yan removed the barrier shield, turned around and praised with a smile. At the same time, he sighed in his heart, saying that he was indeed Kai's father. It seemed that they were his biological children. Yesterday during the research group's activities, Might Dai finally realized his own strength. And because Xia Yan no longer had to worry about being beaten to death by Might Dai's punch without knowing the severity of the situation, he came to Might Dai early this morning to spar and hone his physical skills. And Might Dai also needed to make up for his shortcomings in combat, so the two of them hit it off immediately, and they fought like a bolt from the blue, and have been fighting until now. Teacher Xia Yan, you are too kind. I haven't figured out how to crack many of the moves you used before. Hearing Xia Yan's praise, Might Dai smiled innocently, and he was no different from the 10,000-year-old genin before. He had no awareness of being a strong man at all. Those are just some tricks. Xia Yan shrugged. Through the previous competition, Xia Yan has already noticed that he and Might Dai are in the opposite situation. He has a lot of things, but lacks a decisive move. Might Dai is strong on paper, but he is only straightforward and can easily lose to some simple tricks. It's just right that the two can hone each other and make up for their shortcomings. After fighting for a long time, the two are a little tired, so they sat down at a stone table in the yard to rest. Xia Yan conjured up 2 bottles of water, handed one to Might Dai, and opened one himself and took a sip. Then he said, speaking of which, Mr. Dai, what are your plans for the future? Might Dai, who was drinking water, almost choked. After coughing a few times, he looked at Xia Yan nervously. Teacher Xia Yan, are you going to fire me? Xia Yan looked a little strange. Mr. Dai, after you know your strength, do you still plan to stay in the tavern as a waiter? Does that mean he should be replaced by a sweeping job? Actually, there's nothing wrong with being a waiter. Might Dai scratched his head and smiled innocently. After all, the salary is high and the workload is not too heavy, which allows me to spend more time with Guy. Besides, working in a tavern is like going home. The customers are all talented and speak well, but they dress a little weird. You are the least qualified person to say this. Xia Yan looked at Might Dai with his corrugated hair and green tights, and complained silently in his heart. Then he heard Might Dai suddenly sighed. If I had known this several years ago, I might have experienced the real ninja life that I longed for when I was a child. For example, protecting a princess in distress, saving a small country in crisis, and destroying the conspiracy of the evil ninja who wants to destroy Konoha. Hey, is the ninja life in your mind so weird? Are you sure you are not talking about the Naruto movie? Xia Yan continued to complain in his heart. Might Dai added, after all, I set a self-restraint for myself on the first day of practicing the 8 gates. The 8 gates are the power of protection. Only when you have to die to protect something important to you can you use the power of the 8 gates. Speaking of which, dying gloriously to save a country like the heroes in the storybooks was once my biggest dream. So since I started practicing this technique, I have been looking for something worth dying for. But the funny thing is that when Kai was born, I really hit something to protect at the cost of my life, but I didn't want to die at all. Might Dai looked at Xia Yan and smiled self-deprecatingly. Now it seems that I have been subconsciously ignoring those signs that can let me know my strength. After all, only Might Dai, who has been a genin for 10,000 years, can always be by Kai's side and accompany him to grow up. Xia Yan felt ashamed when he heard this. He was still complacent about starting to change Might Dai's obscure fate, but he never thought about whether this was what the other party wanted. Might Dai saw that Xia Yan had a gloomy expression, and he quickly reacted, waving his hands in front of his chest. I don't mean to blame you, Teacher Xia Yan. It's better to say that I'm very grateful. Although my previous life was comfortable, it was ultimately a feeling of self-deception. After all, a few years ago, many children under the age of 10 had to go to the battlefield. I obviously had some strength, but I was hiding behind everyone. It was really ashamed. So yesterday, when I saw that Teacher Xia Yan had found a way for ordinary students to become stronger, I was deeply inspired. At least I should share the protective power of the 8 gates with more people. Xia Yan perked up when he heard this, raised his eyebrows and said, "Mr. Dai, do you want to teach the 8 games to more people?" Mike Dai touched the back of his head a little embarrassedly. "I do have such a plan, but I haven't figured out how to do it specifically, so I'd like to trouble you to continue to take me in for a while. By the way, Teacher Xia Yan, wait for me." As he spoke, Mike Dai seemed to suddenly remember something, and after saying a word, he got up and ran into the house. Not long after, he ran back and handed an old scroll to Xia Yan. "What is this?" Xia Yan took the scroll curiously. Mike Dai gave a thumbs up and said with a smile, "It contains the practice method of 8 games ninjutsu, as well as the practice experience I have summarized over the years. I will give it to you, Teacher Xia Yan." Chapter 79 Extracurricular Tutoring Class. After hearing what Mike Dai said, Xia Yan's hand holding the scroll froze, and then he looked at the other party helplessly. "Mr. Dai, your way of sharing the 8 games is too simple and crude." Mike Dai was slightly startled, then reacted and shook his head repeatedly. "I naturally wouldn't do this to others. But Teacher Xia Yan, you're special." Although he knew that there was no strange meaning in Mike Dai's words, Xia Yan still shuddered. It seems that he accidentally raised Mike Dai's favorability too high. So is this scroll the so-called favorability reward? It seems that I have to be more careful in the future, so as not to accidentally enter Mike Dai's strategy route. Mike Dai saw Xia Yan's strange expression and thought he wanted to refuse, so he quickly explained, "Teacher Xia Yan, just accept it. After seeing your combat power detector and cultivation ideas yesterday, I knew that you would explore these things sooner or later, and even do better. So this is just to save you a little time, and I'm just doing my part. Please don't be polite to me." Xia Yan pondered for a moment, and finally shook his head and smiled bitterly and accepted it. As Mike Dai said, the principle of the 8 gates of Dunjia is not too difficult for him, but the difficulty lies in whether the practitioner can persist. After accepting the scroll, Xia Yan did not read it immediately, but smiled and said to Mike Dai, "Mr. Dai, I owe you a big favor in this case, and it seems inappropriate to continue to let you be an employee." Mike Dai was stunned when he heard this. "I gave you the 8 gates of Dunjia, and you actually want to fire me? Is there any law in this?" "Fortunately," Xia Yan quickly said, "since you want to promote the 8 gates, why don't you come to the ninja school and be my colleague?" Mike Dai finally breathed a sigh of relief, but soon hesitated again. "You mean to let me be a teacher in the ninja school? Can I really do it?" Xia Yan couldn't help laughing. "The average teacher in the ninja school is only at the level of tuning. It's a waste of talent for you, Mr. Dai, to be a teacher. And I'm not talking about ordinary teachers, but special lecturers who will be set up next school year." "Special lecturers?" Mike Dai asked curiously. "Mr. Dai, you may not know that our tavern and the school actually have a cooperative relationship. We provide additional funds to the school, and the school trains more SEAL talents we need. And this fund will be used for the SEAL courses, and it will also be used to carry out certain reforms in the ninja school. One of the links is to hire teachers with various specialties to teach students. This is the so-called special lecturer." Mike Dai nodded repeatedly, and only then did he know that there was such a relationship between the tavern and the school. It made him feel that his work was more meaningful. However, Mike Dai still had some doubts. "But Mr. Xia Yan, the curriculum of the ninja school is already very tight. Can we really offer these courses?" "Of course," Xia Yan explained with a smile, "because these courses will be held after school in a similar form to a research group. Mr. Dai, you should also know that the ninja school has an early school dismissal time. This is to allow those children from the ninja clan to have time to learn their own secret techniques. But this is not very friendly to those students born in civilian or civilian ninja families. After all, they can only practice what they have been taught in school repeatedly, or simply go out to play because there is no one to supervise them. In fact, the gap between children from different backgrounds, in addition to the reason of talent, is gradually widened like this." Mike Dai recalled his life in the ninja school many years ago and nodded with deep sympathy. He practiced hard every day after school, but unfortunately no one guided him, and the gap between him and other students became wider and wider. Then he heard Xia Yan say, "So just like my sealing technique research group, the ninja school will also open more research groups, or tutoring classes, in the next academic year, to provide students with a way to continue to improve themselves after school. These tutoring classes include both remedial classes for poor students and advanced classes for good students. The remedial classes are run by teachers in the school. And the task of the special lecturers is to give 1 or 2 classes to the students in the advanced classes after school every week, sharing some little experiences in training or doing tasks. This will not delay their own work too much, and will greatly improve the students' level. And some of the teaching tasks that have the responsibility of the guiding genin can be delegated to the ninja school. Prevent some talented civilian students from wasting their time. After all, things like climbing trees and treading water are actually not impossible for ninja school students. Learning early will only be beneficial. Speaking of this, Xia Yan couldn't help but think of Sasuke in the future in the original work. He is from the Uchiha clan, but he can only learn to climb trees and tread water after graduation. This is simply miserable. Moreover, Xia Yan found that students nowadays are still thinking about love affairs at a young age. This is simply because they have been idle. As a responsible teacher, he naturally has to prevent premature love, so he naturally has to give everyone more negative feedback. It is definitely not because he is still a single dog that he has a revengeful mentality. After listening to Xia Yan's idea of extracurricular tutoring, Mike Day, who has well-developed tear glands, was already in tears. Teacher Xia Yan, you are so thoughtful for your students. Xia Yan smiled and said, this is what I should do as a teacher. It's nothing. It's really nothing. After all, Xia Yan has even arranged for everyone to went to the factory after graduation. What's a tutoring class? It just so happens that the work-study program can be launched together with the tutoring class as a prelude to opening a factory in the future. At this time, Mike Dai also made up his mind, holding Xia Yan's hand and said, Teacher Xia Yan, please let me become a special lecturer. No money is required. You are very welcome, but I still have to pay. Xia Yan smiled. And my foundation building plan also needs Mr. Dai, no, I should say Teacher Dai's assistance. Teacher Dai, it's too early. Mike Dai touched the back of his head and felt a little embarrassed. But he quickly reacted. Oh, Teacher Xia Yan, you also have a foundation building plan, so won't we have some conflicts? There is no conflict. Xia Yan said. My foundation building plan is for all students, to improve their overall quality. And Mr. Dai, you are going to teach the 8 gates, which is naturally for students who are preparing to specialize in physical skills. The two will only complement each other and will not conflict. More importantly, when you really start teaching, Mr. Dai, you won't be able to pay attention to everyone's situation like you did to Wakai, which may lead to accidents caused by students' improper practice. So naturally, my training suit and meridian scroll are indispensable. Mike Dai pondered over Xia Yan's words, and a few drops of cold sweat immediately flowed down his forehead. Indeed, the key to practicing the 8 gates is to keep the intensity of the exercise at the critical point where the body is about to be unable to bear it. If it is less, it will not have any effect, and if it is more, it will really hurt the body. It took him nearly 20 years of practice to barely grasp the right measure. It was no problem to take care of Akai alone, but he couldn't handle more people. If a student was seriously injured, he really didn't know how to deal with it. Sure enough, his previous thoughts were too naive, and Teacher Xia Yan was thoughtful. Mike Dai felt relieved, and he was more and more certain that the ninja school was where he belonged. He even couldn't help imagining his future as a passionate teacher. He seemed to have seen himself and a group of students in tights, sweating their youth and running towards the sunset, but as he thought about it, he felt something was wrong. Why in his fantasy, everyone's tights were yellow? Chapter 80 Strange Anbu. Afterwards, Xia Yan explained the specific rules of the tutoring class to Mike Dai, asking him to prepare for the class during this time. Then the two of them started sparring again, fighting until the tavern opened in the evening. Recently, as word of mouth spread, the business of the Keenan Tavern has become more and more prosperous. Every night the tavern is crowded, and the sales of Keenan card packs have also increased exponentially, beginning to show the true power of a money printing machine. Xia Yan was always surrounded by people because of his status as the Jewel King. Unable to bear the annoyance, he left the tavern early, rubbing his aching shoulders and walking slowly towards home. After walking for a long time, he finally arrived at the door of his house on a remote street. However, he did not go in directly, but suddenly stopped. By the way, I'm home, are you not going to show up? Xia Yan's voice echoed in the empty street. With a swish. The next moment, a dark figure appeared on a telephone pole not far away, with a bright moon hanging behind him. He was wearing a sleeveless black ninja uniform with the grey overalls on the outside, and more importantly, a mouse-shaped mask on his face. Xia Yan couldn't help but narrow his eyes. It was an Ambu. I just don't know if it was an ordinary Ambu or a root ninja. You can actually detect my presence.
You are worthy at being the white devil that people often mention recently. The Yambu praised lightly. Although he was praised by the Yambu elite, Xia Yan's face was a little speechless. White devil? Even if you praise me with my nickname when playing cards, I won't be happy. And where did you get this name? Are you sure they are not discussing playing cards? Xia Yan shook his head slightly, temporarily putting these distracting thoughts behind his mind, and asked, "So, sir, what do you want to see me for?" The Yambu did not answer, but turned his head to look at the bright moon in the sky, and said slowly, "Yushin Xia Yan graduated from the ninja school in Konoha in the 36th year. His grades were mediocre, but his dream was to become the 5th Hokage. After graduation, he entered the sealing class and gradually showed excellent talent for sealing techniques. He was promoted to Chunin in Konoha in the 39th year, and to Special Junin in the 42nd year of Konoha. So far, he has completed 33 D-level missions, 140 C-level missions, 57 B-level missions, 18 A-level missions, and 3 S-level missions." After telling Xia Yan's experience, the Yambu praised again. For a ninja born in a civilian ninja family, this resume is enough to be proud of. But as a smart person, you should have realized that there is an invisible ceiling above your head. Return to school to be a teacher, open a shop to do business. Have you given up? Do you still remember your dream? Do you want to live an ordinary life like this? Xia Yan became more and more impatient as he listened, and couldn't help but ask, "So what do you mean?" The eyes behind the mask of the Yambu stared at Xia Yan, and then said lightly, "Yushin Xia Yan, have you heard of the root?" Xia Yan was slightly startled when he heard the words, and for a moment he felt mixed emotions. Here it comes. The man who has recruited countless protagonists in countless parallel worlds and been rejected countless times finally found him. Yes, it is the man with a cross scar on his face, Shimura Danzo. Seeing that Xia Yan did not answer, the Yambu nodded slightly again. "You have even heard of the root. Very good, I know you were a smart person, different from those teachers who just get by. Yes, I came here this time to invite you to join our organization." Xia Yan finally came back to his senses and gradually became speechless. Why does it feel that the style of the root ninja is not the same as he imagined? What happened to the emotionless killing tool? Could this be the dark history of the root's development? However, Xia Yan had already clung to Baiwako and Kushina's thighs and had no intention of dealing with the root, so he didn't plan to delve into it. Sorry, just as Xia Yan opened his mouth to refuse, he was interrupted by the other party. Don't rush to refuse. You may have heard of the root and have some bad impressions of it, but do you really understand the root? Do you understand its organizational culture? Do you know what kind of development space it has in the future? Why can it transform from an Anbu training institution into a pillar supporting Konoha in secret? Have you seriously considered these issues? Do you know that it is a project secretly supported by the village? Do you know what the relationship is between its leader, Danzo, and the Santomi Hokage? Yes, you may not have to deal with the root for the rest of your life and continue to live the life of an ordinary ninja. But I hope you first understand what kind of organization this is. Aren't you looking for an opportunity to prove yourself? Come to the root, it may be the opportunity you are looking for. Opportunities are always reserved for those who have dreams and preparations. Are you ready? Seeing Xia Yan stunned and completely stunned by him, the Yambu was secretly proud of himself, and continued. First, let me introduce you to the organizational culture of the root. Soon in our past, come on, everything starts with understanding. The knowledge, power, and wealth you want are all in the root, it just depends on whether you have the courage to fight for it. After saying this in a hoarse voice, the Yambu looked at Xia Yan with a calm look. Even with a mouse mask, one can still feel his determination. As the strongest headhunter in the root, no one can refuse to join the root after listening to his words. But he still felt a little emotional. In fact, there was no need to be so troublesome before saying these long speeches. It's hard to say about the ninja clan, but for civilian ninjas like Yushin Xia Yan, as long as they put out the name of Elder Danzo, they will bow down. Then drag them into the root and put a curse seal on them to create a fait accompli. Finally, let Elder Danzo go to the Hokage's office and drink 3 glasses of wine as punishment. It's a pity that the previous White Fang incident backfired. In order to quell the dissatisfaction of the ninjas who gradually came to their senses, the 3rd generation had to attack the root and took the opportunity to cut a lot of the root's manpower. Even the walking Mako left the root, and no one knew where she went. Many ninjas also learned that there was a notorious secret organization in the village, and even the name of Danzo-sama was not very useful.
In addition, the root is now hiding from the limelight, and it is easy to be caught again if they use violence in the village, so now they have to use rhetoric to change the other party's prejudice against the root. However, after tricking people into the root, they can return to the original routine. Especially this Xia Yan, who was a talent designated by Danzo Sama to recruit, so he used all his rhetoric on him, and even his voice became a little hoarse. Of course, rhetoric alone is not enough, he actually used other tricks in secret. Illusion. That's right, in fact, he was also performing a sound illusion while speaking. This illusion is different from ordinary illusions. It has little disturbance to the chakra in the human body and is basically impossible to be discovered. Of course, the price is that the power is also very small, and it can only slightly affect the opponent's emotions. However, combined with his well-honed rhetoric, it was no problem for him to defeat Xia Yan. The result was as he expected. With the double attack of his illusion and rhetoric, Xia Yan went from being impatient at the beginning to being focused later, and finally showing a longing for the root. You see, next, Xia Yan cried and shouted that he wanted to visit the root to learn. Sure enough, he saw Xia Yan quickly said, "I'm sorry, I didn't remember a lot of things just now, can you say it again from the beginning?" And Chapter 81. Sealing Ninja's Home. Say it again from the beginning. Upon hearing that, the Yambu subconsciously took a step back and almost fell off the electric pole. After finally standing firmly, he was furious. You say it so easily. Do you know how much chakra and energy I have to consume to maintain that illusion? The Yambu roared in his heart, but soon calmed down. He stared at Xia Yan's handsome face full of expectation through the mask. It was really impossible to tell whether this guy was playing a trick on him or not. Could it be that he broke my illusion? No, it is rare for him to have such a high level of sealing technique at his age, so where would he have the time to study illusion? Is this guy born to like to get to the bottom of things? That's right, perhaps only people with this kind of personality will study the obscure sealing technique. But even so, he didn't intend to repeat the long speech, so he said, "I'm glad that you have such a keen mind to explore. We need people like you in the root. But as the saying goes, seeing is believing. Instead of just listening to me here, it's better to go to the root and find out more directly." After saying this, the corners of his mouth under the mask couldn't help but curl up slightly. Because he didn't lie, he really had to go to the root in person to truly see the organizational culture there. However, Xia Yan's expression gradually became suspicious. Wait, could it be that all those things just now are made up by you, and now you can't repeat them exactly the same? The Ang was silent for a moment, and saw that Xia Yan's hand began to touch the ninja tool bag. Thinking of the instructions of Danzo, he sighed in his heart. Since you asked sincerely, I'll say it again. Then first let me introduce you to the organizational culture of the root. So the Yambu continued to stand on the telephone pole and once again talked endlessly to Xia Yan. But what he didn't know was that in the empty yard of Xia Yan's house in front of him, the 3 children of Xia Yan's family were in the barrier, listening to his advice and happily eating. Grilled chicken wings, my favorite food, number 3 sang while putting the ingredients on the grill, and brushed the secret sauce of Yushin's family on them from time to time. Looking at the chicken wings, skewers, and sausages on the wrap being grilled by the charcoal fire, he couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Oh, I almost forgot to pair it with some vegetables. So number 3 grabbed a handful of chopped green onions and sprinkled them on the food. Number 1 was sitting on the stone table next to him, swinging his feet, holding a grilled chicken wing with both hands, eating with oil dripping from his mouth. How long do you think that idiot will talk? He said incoherently with his mouth full of food. Of course, the longer the better. Number 2 beside him replied, and then casually forked a meatball from the plate on the table with a fork and put it into his mouth. But his eyes never left the projection of a meridian model in front of him, and many parameters were constantly changing around the model. At least we have to analyze his illusion. Not long after, no. 3 also grilled a lot of food and put them one by one on a plate. After finishing everything, he showed a satisfied smile and reached out for a skewer. But he grabbed nothing. Confused? No. 3 looked along the rising plate, and then saw his real body. Xia Yan changed his clothes at this time, his hair was wet, and he had obviously just taken a shower. He held the plate high and said to No. 3 unhappily, I asked you to help me prepare dinner, but I didn't ask you to eat it. Look how obedient they are. But they are also, No. 3 subconsciously looked at No. 1 and No. 2. As a result, he saw the two of them surrounding the Meridian model, studying and analyzing it seriously. And there was no food or plate on the table, and their mouths were clean. No. 3 couldn't help but pout. Why am I always the one who gets hurt? Xia Yan casually took a meatball and threw it into his mouth, then looked at the Anbu who was still standing on the telephone pole and giving a speech, with a strange expression. Hasn't the guy realized that I'm just a projection of the door? Who told him to stand on the telephone pole to show off? Number 2 explained casually. Not to mention that I was controlling the projection and repeatedly asking him various details. If he made mistakes, I would make him start over again. Are you a devil? Xia Yan complained in his heart, and then walked to the side of the three-dimensional Meridian model and said, "How is it? Have you figured out the principle of this technique?" Not so fast, but it can be seen that this technique is similar to the BGM technique that we added to the illusion before, but the chakra fluctuation is smaller and more difficult to be detected. Xia Yan nodded with lingering fear. Yes, if the intelligent brain hadn't detected the abnormal fluctuation of my chakra just now, I wouldn't have noticed that I was in an illusion. Number 2 said again. And this technique is also very meaningful for our research on the relationship between emotions and chakra properties. But what really makes this technique work is his mouth. I heard that the root will collect all kinds of people with special abilities. I didn't expect that there are even MLM talents. It's really unfathomable. Number 1 echoed. Yes, to be honest, I want to go to the root to take a look now. Number 2 also nodded and said, I also think that I may have been too prejudiced against the root in the past. Although the root doesn't seem to have done anything in the original work, if the root really didn't contribute to Konoha, the third-generation old man would not have kept it all the time. You have a point. After so many years in the ninja world, I know that I can't look at the characters and things that appear in the original works with prejudice. Xia Yan said, touching his chin. Perhaps we should give Danzo-sama a chance. With the support of the root, we can also advance the plan faster. Do you think I'm right? Number 1 and Number 2 nodded repeatedly. That's right. You big-headed ghosts. Xia Yan angrily smacked them on the head, but he didn't dare to use too much force. I asked you to analyze his illusion, but what if you are brainwashed? The two little ones covered their foreheads and cried in pain, but they finally woke up. At this time, Xia Yan thought of something else. Hey, why has Number 3 been so quiet since just now? Ah, he's over there. The three looked around and soon saw Number 3 sneaking towards the gate. Seeing that they were looking over, Number 3 showed a resolute expression, stepped on his short legs and rushed to the gate at full speed. He shouted, "Root forever!" Bang! With a snap of his fingers, No. 3 turned into a wooden ball and fell to the ground, rolling on the ground. No one can make me worry-free. Xia Yan helplessly held his forehead. Then he looked at the Anbu again, thoughtfully. It seems that this technique is more effective than I thought. Maybe it can be used in school to improve everyone's learning efficiency, and in the future factories, so Xia Yan gave instructions. No. 2. Continue to increase your efforts. Don't let him go until this technique is analyzed. No. 2 showed a dark smile. This is what you said. I won't care if he kills me when the time comes. Xia Yan smiled. I don't think he will be stupid enough to break into the home of a sealing technique ninja. As a result, late at night that day, Yushin Xia Yan. A hoarse and shrill voice broke through the sky above the street in the southeast corner of the village, but it soon stopped. Xia Yan, who was sleeping, was also awakened, and then saw the information of foreign enemy invasion and foreign enemy capture popped up on the interface one after another. After mumbling, he fell asleep again. Chapter 82 Danzo at noon the next day, in a secret underground base in Konoha. Shimura Danzo was covering his nose and frowning as he looked at a root ninja on the medical bed. The strong smell of stinky socks filled the entire medical room, and he couldn't help asking, "What's that smell?" The root ninja next to him reported respectfully, "Nato, Master Danzo, this is the smell of natto. When we found ragged in the garbage dump near Yushin Xia Yan's house, he was covered with natto. He had been washed many times, but there was still a smell. Probably, it was pickled." Danzo's eyes twitched slightly, and he picked up Rat's diagnosis and checked it. Although Rat didn't have many wounds on his body, he was now in a coma due to excessive chakra consumption. He actually consumed chakra to this extent, it seems that Rat must have experienced a hard battle. It seems that Yushin Xia Yan's strength should not be underestimated. Danzo made a judgment in his heart, but he was still a little confused as to why he was covered with natto. At this time, the root ninja beside him reported in time. Just now, Rat woke up for a while. According to him, he was teased by Xia Yan with the projection technique, and he broke into the other party's house out of anger. But he lost his vision and hearing as soon as he entered the yard, and then he was attacked by something unknown, and fainted in a few seconds. Humph, stupid guy. He dared to break into the home of a sealing ninja without any preparation. Danzo snorted coldly. Although few people know about it, he himself is also a master of sealing techniques, so he is not surprised by this result. The root ninja continued. After he woke up, he was locked in a small dark room with a square meter, and began to be forced to play that keening game console invented by Xia Yan. If he stopped the game or lost, Naruto would be poured into the ceiling. In the end, he was drowned by Naruto because of his chakra exhaustion. When he woke up again, it was already the time we found him. Danzo couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. It turned out that the chakra was exhausted because of playing the keening game console. Is this a new form of torture? Although Danzo was well informed and knew hundreds of tortures, he had never heard of this one. He could only say that he really couldn't understand the young man's train of thought. It is said that ninjas who always study the sealing technique will become a little abnormal in their minds. He didn't believe it at first. After all, he himself had no problem. But now it seems that this statement is not completely unreasonable. Danzo didn't know how to react, and finally looked at the unconscious rat and said indifferently, "It's a disgraceful guy. He is lucky not to lose his life. Don't let this guy make the base stink. Take him down and flush until there is no smell. Use the water dragon bullet technique." After saying that, he turned and left, walking towards his office. Xia Yan, is this your answer? Danzo's only remaining left eye emitted a deep light. Soon he walked to the door of the room. The big word "Okage" was written on the top of the door. Then there were two small assistant written in the lower right corner. Yes, this is the Okage, assistant, office. After Danzo went in and sat down, the Yambu next to him handed him a file about Xia Yan. He flicked through it and pondered in silence. He thought it would be easy to send the Roots Ace headhunter to recruit Xia Yan for his own use. He didn't expect such twists and turns. It can only be said that he is worthy of the talent he values, and it is not so easy to get him. However, what Danzo values most is not his sealing skills, but his keen tavern. Although he still can't understand why someone would spend money on virtual cards that can be seen and touched. But the fact that this tavern is making a lot of money every day still deeply attracted his attention. Since the incident with Sakamo, in addition to the reduction of manpower, the funding of the route has also been cut by a large part. This makes Danzo urgently need a new source of funds to continue to protect Konoha as before. The Keenan Tavern is one of his targets. And when investigating the Keenan Tavern, he also found that the tavern has established a cooperative relationship with the ninja school. This means that if he takes down Natsuko Amura, wouldn't he be able to reach out to the ninja school? You know, that place has always been the forbidden territory of Hiruzen, and he has never been allowed to interfere. At the same time, Sakamo's incident also taught him a lesson. Since he has to protect Konoha in the dark, he must carry it out to the end and can't show up in front of people so easily. Just hiding behind Hiruzen is not safe enough, and it is easy for the guy to drag him out to block the knife. On the contrary, Natsuko Amura did a good job. He knew how to keep a low profile at a young age. Through the cooperation plan with the school, he successfully hid behind Hiruzen. Danzo had to praise him. This guy is like me, I must not let him stay. If he can take down Natsuko Amura, then he can hide behind Natsuko Amura behind Hiruzen. Now the blame can't be put on him, right? But it seems that it is still difficult to take down Natsuko Amura. Danzo slowly flipped through Natsuko's information. The more he read, the more he felt that this guy was like a hedgehog, making it difficult to start. He established a closer relationship with Biwako through the cooperation between the tavern and the school, and Uzumaki Kushina also had shares in the tavern. This means that he has the support of Biwako and Mito, the two most powerful women in Konoha. If they want to attack him secretly, he doesn't smoke, drink, or gamble, and he doesn't even go out of the village. There is no flaw at all. Just when Danzo began to consider whether to use that woman, he happened to read the information to the end and saw a line of information that was recorded not long ago. Then he was slightly startled. It turns out that Xia Yan defeated Uchiha Setsuna's son not long ago, and this is the information that Ryoma got from the bug, so it can't be wrong. So Danzo quickly showed a cold smile. Xia Yan is still too low-key. How can such a thing not be publicized? Since it's not easy for me to do it now, let the mad dogs of the Uchiha clan play with him. No matter what the result is, he will not be in any harm. Shimura ship troublemaker Danzo thought so. Not long after, there was a knock at the door, interrupting his thoughts. Danzo, lunch is here. Is it so late already? Danzo, who had just come up with a strategy to kill two birds with one stone, was in a good mood. He glanced at the wall clock and felt empty in his stomach. So he said, then bring it in. A root ninja pushed the door open and put a tray on the table. Danzo, who was preparing to eat, suddenly saw a bowl of natto in today's dishes. His face froze. The scene of the rat drowned in natto in the secret room came to his mind. He put down his chopsticks. He suddenly felt that he had no appetite. Chapter 83 The Discovery of the Curse. Monday afternoon, in the sealing art office of the ninja school. Since Kushina went to the classroom to supervise everyone's practice of drawing runes, Xia Yan was the only one left in the office. At this time, he was sitting at his desk, humming a little tune while repairing the compact power detector that was blown up by Might Guy. He seemed to be in a good mood. After all, he had gained a lot in the past 2 days and got a lot of useful things from the root ninja. The first one was naturally the illusion he called the Koutao Tenzai. After unremitting efforts, No. 2 finally roughly analyzed this art. Unlike ordinary illusions that make the opponent hallucinate, this art directly affects emotions through chakra, which inspired Xia Yan. After all, chakra is a product of a one-to-one mixture of spiritual energy and physical energy. There is naturally a very close connection between emotions and chakra properties. For example, Senjutsu Brahma found out that when the Uchiha clan lost important things, the strong hatred would cause special chakra to emerge in the brain, acting on the optic nerve and causing changes in the eyes. And this is the so-called pupil that reflects the soul Sharingan. At the same time, after this kind of chakra appears, it will in turn affect the spirit, causing a person's personality to change drastically and fall into evil ways. As for why the second generation knows the physiological principles of the Sharingan so well, let's not talk about this topic for now. So when the root ninja broke into his house again in the middle of the night and was captured by the defensive barrier, Xia Yan held the idea of doing one thing without doing 2 things at once, and decided to verify his ideas on him. So he threw the root ninja into a box reinforced with a seal, and let him play cards in the fear of being drowned by natto. Then he explored the relationship between emotions and chakra properties by studying the chakra extracted from the Keening game console. Sure enough, under the pressure of natto hell, the chakra of the root ninja underwent drastic changes. If it were the protagonist, those who should open the Sharingan would open the Sharingan, and those who should explode the 9 tails would explode the 9 tails. Unfortunately, this guy did not have the aura of the protagonist. He was extremely frightened for most of the day until his chakra was exhausted. However, Xia Yan also got a lot of interesting data, and at the same time, he also got rid of the pile of natto that No. 3 secretly bought at home. It was really a win-win situation. Although Xia Yan had not yet figured out what the purpose of this research was, this set of equipment could be modified and sold to the Uchiha clan at a high price in the future. Let them open their eyes. Anyway, this machine was also marinated with natto, and Xia Yan didn't dare to take it out of the storage scroll. Finally, Xia Yan got an unexpected surprise from this root ninja. That is, he found a rune formula in the other party's chakra that he had never seen before. Based on his memory of the original work, Xia Yan quickly determined that this thing should be the notorious curse seal formula. It seems that in addition to the curse seal marks on the body surface, the curse seal formula is also hidden in the chakra of the body. As the most secret and evil type of sealing technique, the curse seal has always been passed on by word of mouth, and rarely recorded on paper and pens. Therefore, Xia Yan has rarely dabbled in this aspect of knowledge. Now that he has come across it, he will naturally not miss the opportunity to study it. After observation, Xia Yan found that it was different from many sealing techniques that simply absorbed the opponent's chakra. The curse seal technique was directly rooted in the soul. When the host extracted chakra, it would mix its own information into it to form a new curse seal technique to achieve the purpose of self-replication. This reminded him of a familiar thing, virus. It also entered from the outside world, parasitized in the human body, and used resources to replicate itself. It can lurk in the human body without people being aware of it, or it can express itself, causing various adverse reactions or even death in the human body. So the curse seal is essentially a chakra virus? It seems to be quite reasonable. Since runes are a programming language for chakra, it is not surprising that the curse seal is a chakra virus. So, is this chakra virus a computer virus or a biological virus? Xia Yan soon realized that the curse seal technique played a very important role in his subsequent research, and even some plans would be adjusted because of this. It seems that there are more things to study. Xia Yan smiled helplessly. This is really a luxurious trouble. And when school was over, Xia Yan had just finished repairing the compact power detector when he heard the footsteps and voices of several people outside the door. It sounded like they were arguing about something. Then the door of the office was opened, and 6 members of the research team walked in one after another. Hong was furious, while Lin, Ashuma and Ebisu looked helpless, and Kai was as energetic as usual. Only Obito was dejected, and finally walked into the office. Well, it seems that our brother Obito has caused trouble again. However, Xia Yan did not care. After putting the compact power detector away, he said, I have put the training clothes and meridian scrolls on the table over there. You should change your clothes first. However, as soon as he finished speaking, only Kai walked over happily and picked up the training clothes, while everyone else looked embarrassed. Teacher. Hong hurriedly ran to Xia Yan, raised her head, and said with a cute face, Teacher, can we change the place for the activity? Oh? Isn't the training ground behind that teaching building good? Xia Yan said casually. Speaking of this, Hong got angry. It's all the fault of that idiot Obito. He told others about our activities there. Everyone said they wanted to go and have a look after school. Hearing this, Obito's neck shrank and he felt a little embarrassed. He now deeply realized his mistake. After all, doesn't this mean that Lin's tights outfit will be seen by everyone? Hong wanted to die when she thought about being seen in tights by everyone. So she pleaded with her face. So can we change places, teacher? Everyone looked at Xia Yan with expectant eyes. Except for Kai, he said that he would be more excited when being watched by others. Xia Yan touched his chin and pondered, and by the way, brewed a tense atmosphere. Then he said slowly, a person's value lies in his talent, not in his clothes. Even if wearing this training suit will cause everyone to laugh, as long as it can improve our strength, what's the harm? 1 day, 10 days, they may still laugh. But what about 100 days, 200 days later? I guarantee that they will never laugh again at the time. Because we have become stronger. Ashuma said expectantly. No, because this set of training suits will be popular in the school at the time. Everyone was stunned. Okay. That will indeed make everyone unable to laugh. But we will also be unable to laugh. Seeing that everyone was speechless, Xia Yan had to clap his hands and said, Okay, then let's do this. I will also wear the training suit this time. You finally have no objection to this, right? Everyone was shocked when they heard this and looked at each other. They have always thought that the design of this training suit, in addition to functional reasons, may not be without some bad taste of Teacher Xia Yan. But Teacher Xia Yan is now taking the initiative to wear this training suit. Did they blame the teacher wrongly? So, except for Kai, everyone felt ashamed and sympathetic. They felt ashamed for wrongly blaming a good person, but also sympathized with the teacher's poor aesthetic taste, which was almost the same as that of Might and his son. Since Teacher Xia Yan had taken the lead, everyone had nothing to say, so they had to pick up a training suit each. Hong and Lin went to the cubicle as usual, and the boys also began to change their clothes. But after everyone was dressed, they found that Teacher Xia Yan was still standing still, so Ashuma asked curiously, Teacher, don't you have to change into training clothes too? Xia Yan smiled. No hurry, because I'm already wearing it inside. After that, he unbuttoned the white shirt with both hands, revealing a black tights inside. There is also a white bear pattern on the chest, chapter 84. Going to the rooftop at first glance, Ashuma could tell that the texture of the clothes was completely different from theirs. Not to mention the conspicuous white bear pattern. So he yelled in surprise, Why is your training suit different from ours, teacher? The other boys also looked over curiously. That's naturally because, Xia Yan smiled and snapped his fingers. Boom. White smoke exploded. A fully armed Dark Knight walked out of the dispersing smoke and said slowly in a low voice, I'm Batman. Ah. So handsome. Teacher, can I touch you? After a while, the boys were still like crazy, dancing around Xia Yan, staring at Xia Yan's Batman suit with greedy eyes. The fibers of this suit have a slightly metallic luster, and the vertical interlacing forms a dense three-dimensional mesh structure. The surface is delicate and textured, and it looks very high-end. The cheap tights they were wearing can't be compared with it at all. Moreover, this tights is very close-fitting, with smooth lines, highlighting the muscle contours of teacher Xia Yan. At the same time, the key parts are inlaid with black armor plates of different shapes, making the appearance of the whole battlesuit look simple but not monotonous. In addition, teacher Xia Yan is fully armed, wearing a black helmet with small pointed corners similar to bat ears on both ends. He wears armor with serrated blades on his hands, black combat boots on his feet, a white tool belt around his waist, and a black cape behind him. The whole battlesuit combines horror and elegance, with a contradictory and harmonious beauty. It is very different from the style of the ninja world, but also very consistent with the aesthetics of ninjas. No wonder the boys are so excited. Unfortunately, this high-end aesthetic does not seem to be understood by everyone. Hong and Lin, who have changed their clothes and come out, and Kashina, who has returned from the classroom, are standing far away at this time, looking at them with subtle eyes. The three girls exchanged glances, and shook their heads with their hands at the same time, indicating that they could not understand the aesthetics of this group of boys at all. What's so good about dressing up as a big bat? After Xia Yan had beaten off the little ghost's dirty hand countless times, he was a little annoyed. So he put away the helmet and clothes that were a bit in the way with the storage technique on the battlesuit, and then said helplessly, Okay, let's go now that we've seen enough. At this time, everyone came back to their senses, and thought of the fate of being watched and laughed at by others, and couldn't help but look bitter. Ashuma even complained directly. Teacher, you're cheating, and your clothes are completely different from ours. Xia Yan explained helplessly. You are wearing a style that will be popular in the future, so you naturally have to lower the cost, and I'm wearing this for my own use, so of course the materials will be better. But in essence, there is no difference between the two. The students looked at Xia Yan's heavy bad battlesuit, and then looked at themselves, which seemed to be a one-piece thermal underwear bought from a street stall, and couldn't help showing a suspicious look. Seeing this, Kashina on the side also covered her mouth and laughed secretly. Xia Yan glanced at her unhappily, then scratched his head and said, Okay, I admit that there is still a little gap in function. Xia Yan was forced to review his plan under the public opinion. Then he thought about it again, and began to feel that the Dark Knight seemed not suitable to appear in front of so many people. After all, he seemed to have underestimated the appeal of this dress to boys. On the contrary, the girls gave it a mediocre evaluation. Sure enough, it was a lie that Batman was popular with so many female heroes and villains in the comics. The real situation is like excessive fitness, which can only attract men. Thinking of the scene of zombies besieging the city later, Xia Yan couldn't help but shudder and gave up the idea of going to the training ground. So he said righteously, Okay, then let's change a place. A moment later, on the rooftop of the teaching building. Now everyone has no objection, right? Xia Yan stood in the middle of the rooftop and said to the students. At the same time, he felt that the rooftop was more suitable for Batman. Everyone looked around the empty rooftop and nodded repeatedly with satisfaction. The space here is large enough, and there is no need to worry about being seen. The scenery is even nice. It is simply the best place for their research group to carry out activities. How come they didn't think of it before? Just when everyone was celebrating, only Lin looked a little strange. Because she always felt a little strange, why did teacher Xia Yan have the key to the rooftop? Could it be that the teacher had planned to use this place as an activity venue? Then he deliberately taught in the training ground before, could it be, just to make people laugh at us? Lin hurriedly shook her head and threw this rebellious idea out of her mind. No, the teacher's ninja way is create happiness with heart, how could he do this to us? Out of respect for teacher Xia Yan, Lin quickly convinced herself that it was just a coincidence. She also subconsciously ignored the possibility that the object of the teacher's creation of happiness was not them. Then Xia Yan clapped his hands and asked everyone to come and gather quickly. After everyone stood in front of him, Xia Yan slowly said, In the last research group activity, I have introduced to you some of the principles and uses of this training suit and meridian scroll. I hope you haven't forgotten it. Everyone said that they had not forgotten it. Then from today, we will officially start testing these two teaching aids. Xia Yan said. Everyone should remember that the data obtained from these tests are related to the implementation of the foundation building plan and will affect the training of all ninja school students in the future, so everyone can't just deal with it. Yes. Everyone heard teacher Xia Yan's serious words and felt that they had a great responsibility, so they all responded loudly. Seeing this, Xia Yan nodded with satisfaction and said, Then first, everyone open the meridian scroll and see what changes have been made compared to before. After hearing what the teacher said, everyone was also a little curious, and hurriedly opened the scroll and injected chakra like last time. Then the ink lines appeared on the scroll again, forming the same meridian map and various data parameters as before. However, on the meridian map, there were a few more large characters that were not there before. Ashuma was the first to yell. It says here that I'm at the 7th level of ki training. Home curled her lips. I'm at the 6th level of ki training. Kai. I'm at the 8th level of ki training. Lin. I'm at the 5th level. What about you, Obito? Obito said with a little pride, I'm at the 9th level of ki training. Everyone gasped when they heard this, and their hearts were shocked. Who would have thought that Obito, who usually lags behind, is actually a 9th level ki training expert? The 9th level of ki training, how terrifying. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 85, Genius or Last Place. But after everyone took a few breaths, they gradually thought of a question. So what on earth is this ki training level? Ashuma spoke first. Teacher, what does it mean to have several levels of ki training, and why does Obito have 9 levels? Xia Yan naturally knew that they would have such questions, and explained calmly. The so-called ki training levels are actually a comprehensive evaluation of your current meridian capacity based on combat power and age. The more chakra the meridians can accommodate and the younger you are, the higher the ki training levels will be. This is because the meridians will expand as the body grows. For you who are in a period of rapid growth, it is impossible to directly measure the condition of your meridians based on combat power alone. For example, Ashuma and Kai have similar combat power, but Ashuma is a few months older than Kai. So in fact, Kai's meridian expansion is stronger than Ashuma's, which is reflected in the data that one is at the 5th level of ki training and the other is at the 6th level. And it is actually normal for Obito to have the 9th level of ki training. After all, he was born in the Uchiha clan and has a strong chakra talent. Plus, he has been using his training suit to copy Kai's movements recently, which is equivalent to practicing ahead of time the physical training we are going to do to expand the meridians. Combining the two, it's not surprising that he can reach the 9th level of ki training. Obito was a little proud when he heard this, and then he heard Ashuma say, Teacher, but it seems that Obito is not as good as you said. Obito's smile froze. However, he also wanted to know the answer to this question, so he looked at Xia Yan with a look of inquiry. Xia Yan explained. This is actually very normal. After all, the amount of chakra in the meridians is not equivalent to strength. Sometimes it will affect the performance of strength. I wonder if everyone has noticed a phenomenon, that is, generally girls have stronger chakra control than boys. Everyone thought about it and it seemed to be true. Even Kurane proudly put her hands on her hips, saying that this was her strong point. As a result, she heard teacher Xia Yan say, in fact, in addition to talent and the number of times of practice, the most important reason for this phenomenon is that the meridian capacity of girls is generally smaller than that of boys, so they need to control less chakra, and naturally have a better control level. Home's cheeks suddenly swelled when she heard this, feeling that her most proud talent was suddenly denied by teacher Xia Yan. Xia Yan pretended not to see it and continued. The situation of Obito is just the opposite. Although his overall essence is not much, the amount of chakra in his meridians is greater than that of his peers. Just like a child riding a big horse, it is difficult for him to control the chakra in his body. It is understandable that he performs poorly in various practical classes. Of course, his poor performance in cultural subjects is his own problem. Obito suddenly realized that he thought that everyone's chakra was so difficult to control, and he also thought that he had a bad talent. It turned out that everyone was playing in easy mode, and only he was playing in difficult mode. Everyone looked at Obito with complicated eyes, not knowing whether to envy or sympathize. Seeing this, Xia Yan nodded and said, it seems that everyone has thought of it. As long as Obito persists in practicing hard and strengthens his control over chakra, his characteristics will gradually change from disadvantages to advantages and show his true strength. You must have occasionally heard of some ninjas who were the last in the ninja school, but later made rapid progress in strength and even surpassed the geniuses of the same age. In fact, most of them were similar to Obito. They are not the real last, but unpolished rough stones. For example, Master Jiraiya, who was the last at the beginning, was accepted as a disciple by Master Okage. I guess Master Okage also saw his potential. Since I abbreviate meridian capacity as vessel, this phenomenon of fate last counterattack is also called the law of late bloomers. Teacher, Obito looked at Xia Yan with tears in his eyes. He only now realized that although teacher Xia Yan often cheated him, he had such high expectations for him. This made Obito have a strong sense of identification with teacher Xia Yan, who gave birth to me and knows me. If it weren't for teacher Xia Yan, he would probably still be in a daze now, with a lot of talent but unable to realize it. Although the teacher said the great things come late, even if it was Master Jiraiya, without the guidance of Master Okage, he would probably not be able to reach his current height. So teacher Xia Yan is to him just like Master Okage is to Master Jiraiya, and he plays an irreplaceable and important role. Therefore, Obito secretly made up his mind in his heart that he must become a true disciple of teacher Xia Yan. Even if he can't do it, he will regard teacher Xia Yan as his master for the rest of his life. Xia Yan suddenly felt a chill on his back and felt a little palpitation for some reason. He reacted quickly. It must be Danzo who is calculating against him. Xia Yan became alert and decided to be more careful recently. After listening to teacher Xia Yan's explanation, everyone was also surprised at Obito's potential. Lin looked at Obito with satisfaction, with a smile like an old mother on her face. Ashuma was not convinced. Damn it, I will soon practice to the 10th level of ki training, no, the 9th level. Xia Yan smiled and said, your spirit is commendable, but the theoretical number of ki training levels is 13, although I have only seen ninjas who have practiced ki at the 10th level at most. As he said that, he couldn't help but glance at Kushina standing beside him, and felt that his right chest was still aching. Seeing this, Kushina blushed and glared at him fiercely. Serves you right. You should have said so earlier if you wanted the test data. Suddenly locking the office door and taking out a tights for people to wear, no matter who it is, they will think wrongly, okay. Just giving him a small punch is considered good. Then Xia Yan added, by the way, according to the conversion, the 3rd level of ki training is the minimum standard for admission to the ninja school. Those with a lower level will be judged to have difficulty becoming a ninja. At this time, Ebisu, who had always had little presence, froze in his face. After hesitating for a long time, he raised his hand and said, Teacher, even if the student has poor talent, can he reach the level of Obito through acquired efforts? Everyone was slightly stunned when they heard this, and then they remembered that Ebisu didn't seem to say his ki training level just now, so they all looked at him. Are you sure you are not from the Aburama clan? Why is your presence so low? Ebisu knew that the matter of the ki training level could not be concealed, so he simply spread out the scroll to show everyone. 3rd level of ki training. Everyone who came closer didn't know what to say for a while, and they always felt that their worldviews were a little exploded today. Obito, who was the last one, turned out to be a genius, and Ebisu, who had always had good grades in all subjects, was the worst among them. Ebisu, on the other hand, looked quite calm. According to the teacher's calculation, I am the oldest and have the lowest combat power, so it is normal that I am only at the 3rd level of ki training. Come to think of it, I have been spending so much time on cultural courses, maybe I am just avoiding this fact. You can face your own weaknesses, Ebisu, you already have the potential to become stronger. Xia Yan on the side nodded and said, as for your question just now, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer either. After all, this is what we are going to test. But the result may not satisfy you too much. After all, when you are working hard, Obito did not stop. Xia Yan's straightforward words made everyone look at Ebisu with some concern. He was slightly startled, and after a moment of silence, he showed a relieved smile. This is enough. After all, before you provided these teaching aids and training plans, many of us didn't even have the opportunity to work hard. Now I have the opportunity to compete with everyone fairly based on hard work. What else can I be dissatisfied with? So, Ebisu turned his head and looked at other students. So even if you have better talent than me, if you don't work hard, I will catch up with you sooner or later. Heck Tears, you're a little arrogant. Ashuma grabbed Ebisu's neck and scolded with a smile, Ashuma, will never lose to you. To be honest, Ashuma had always felt that Ebisu was a bit annoying before, but now he finally recognized that he was a member of the research team. Hong and Lin were originally a little reluctant to Ebisu, who had a nosebleed at the slightest disagreement, but now they also came over. Hong said with a reserved look, this is what we girls should say. With the help of teacher Xia Yan, we will not lose to you boys. Lin smiled like a little angel. Then let's work hard together. Obito looked profound. Wait until you have the same level of ki training as me, then come to me. Seeing such a scene, Kai was naturally so excited that he shed 2 lines of tears. Oh. My youthful blood is starting to burn again. Come on, let's share the sweat of youth together and run towards the big sunset. Then the touching scene disappeared, and everyone hurriedly stopped Akai, who was running towards the sunset. Stop, Akai, this is a rooftop. I have a cold these days, so I write very slowly. Sorry for posting late. Chapter 86, Entering the Immortal Cultivation. After a while of confusion, the research group's activities finally returned to normal. Everyone stood in front of Xia Yan again and continued to listen to the class. Xia Yan cleared his throat and said, back to the topic just now, there is actually a part of Ashuma's question that has not been answered. That is, what is Gigong? Everyone nodded curiously, indicating that they also wanted to know what it was. Xia Yan continued. Because this is related to our upcoming special training, I will talk about it here. The so-called Ki training is actually a practice system that is close to being lost. It refers to a practice method in ancient times where monks controlled chakra through breathing, so it is also called breathing method. The principle is not complicated. You should have learned it in the ninja knowledge class. The so-called breathing is actually the process of the human body inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. In this process, the oxygen inhaled into the lungs will enter the blood circulation system and eventually reach the tissue cells throughout the body. And the ancient monks used this principle to attach the marked chakra to oxygen, which then reached all the cells of the body. Then through the induction of this chakra, you can indirectly understand the conditions of various parts of your body naturally, including the meridian system. And this is the so-called inner vision. Everyone was attracted by this peculiar practice method, and they all listened attentively with their mouths open. Xia Yan smiled slightly and continued. They practiced such skills with great difficulty in order to understand the meridian system, and then tame the chakra in the body and reach the state of being able to control it as if it were their own arm. It is said that they have such strict requirements for chakra control in order to introduce the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the future and gain greater confidence when they ascend to heaven. Seeing that everyone showed a little doubt, Xia Yan smiled and reminded, don't think this is just a legend. You should know that our first generation Okage is said to have mastered the power of immortals. The students woke up and couldn't help but recall a glimpse of the real thousand hands in the second sealing technique class. Now it seems that only the power of immortals can explain it. So the first generation Okage was so powerful because he learned the breathing method of ancient monks? Obito said with an idea, no wonder the appearance of that technique is a giant Buddha with 1,000 hands. Everyone suddenly realized that everything was connected. It turns out that Shinobi is originally a Buddha. Then everyone was also yearning, with faces full of envy of the Kigong cultivators for the Golden Core Masters. Xia Yan spread his hands and said, I don't know if it's true or not. But in his heart he was complaining. No, that guy is just a cheater. Then Xia Yan continued. Because this monk breathing method has very high requirements for chakra perception, it is like the Onmyoji rune system. It has gradually declined in the competition with the simple and crude ninjutsu system. Now few people know about it. But this does not mean that it has no reference value. For example, the meridian scrolls in your hands also refer to the principles of breathing methods. It can be said to be the crystallization of the combination of the monk system and the Onmyoji system. Everyone suddenly felt that the scrolls in their hands were heavy, with a sense of historical weight. Xia Yan said again. So everyone can see that this training method is very similar to our foundation building plan. Even the training of the breathing method to strengthen the meridians is divided into dynamic and static training, which is exactly the same as the two methods of physical training and actively running chakra to widen the meridians in our plan. It is very meaningful for reference. It's just that we had the meridian scroll, so we can skip the most difficult part of achieving inner vision through breathing, and directly start the training of meridians and the practice of controlling chakra. However, in order to thank and pay tribute to the exploration of predecessors, I still decided to name the stage Ki training period. I believe everyone has no objection. Everyone nodded repeatedly, saying that this name is appropriate. Moreover, in fact, as long as it is not the third stage of Shazili, they can accept it. Then Teacher Xia Yan, can we also master the power of immortals like the first generation in the future? Obito said with expectation. No, brother two, you are too modest. Xia Yan complained in his heart, but smiled slightly on the surface. As I said before, this foundation building plan is to lay a good foundation for you. The specific direction of future development and whether it can succeed depends on you. Everyone nodded thoughtfully, and they were more fortunate to have joined the research team and be able to participate in the foundation building plan in advance. After all, this is a prerequisite for becoming an immortal. Seeing that everyone was so interested in breathing methods, Xia Yan casually popularized a few words. By the way, although using breathing to see inside is no longer appropriate, the fighting methods of monks in the past still have many advantages today. For example, they can use the principle of breathing methods to attach a large amount of chakra to oxygen, reach cells throughout the body through blood circulation, stimulate cell activation, and thus gain extraordinary strength and speed in a short period of time. Akai, who was originally listening to the story, was slightly startled when he heard this, and felt that it sounded familiar. Seeing this, Xia Yan also smiled and said, "It seems that Akai has also realized that this technique and Mr. Dai's 8 Gates ninjutsu have the same purpose. Akai, if you're interested, you can study it with Mr. Dai." And the fragments record that different breathing methods have been derived according to the different properties of the chakra attached to oxygen, such as the breathing of the sun day with yang escape, the breathing of the moon with yin escape, the breathing of the flame with fire escape, the breathing of water with water escape, the breathing of wind with wind escape, the breathing of thunder with lightning escape, and the breathing of rock with earth escape. At the same time, according to the legend that the 6-path sage divided yin and yang and the 5 elements in 7 days, these 7 breathing methods are collectively called the 7 days breathing method. Legend has it that 7 monks once mastered these 7 breathing methods and fought fierce battles with all kinds of demons and monsters. The monk who mastered the breathing of the sun day is extremely powerful. The monk who mastered the breathing of the wind can sense the situation in the distance through air currents and is called the clairvoyant and the wind hearing. The monk who mastered the breathing of the rock is indestructible. A monk who has mastered the breath of fire can spit fire. A monk who has mastered the breath of water can spit water. A monk who has mastered the breath of thunder can vibrate at a high frequency beyond the frequency that the human eye can handle, achieving the effect of invisibility. A monk who has mastered the breath of the moon can create form from nothing. And the God-shaped spiritual tool he created can absorb all things in the world. Everyone was fascinated by what they heard, as if they had returned to the era of the demon god. Then Xia Yan clapped his hands, pulling everyone's attention back. But these have little to do with us for now. If you're interested, you can treat it as a topic for your own research in the future. Then let's get to the point. As I said just now, there are 2 ways to widen the meridians: dynamic exercises and static exercises. Since you're still in the developmental stage, the meridians are relatively fragile, so we will adopt dynamic exercises with little risk in the early stage, that is, to use physical training to guide the chakra to circulate on its own through body movements. Originally, the first set of dynamic exercises I designed was not perfect, and I still need your cooperation to slowly modify and develop it. But thanks to the 8 Gates ninjutsu secrets provided by Mr. Dai and his personal cooperation, we have improved the second set of more complete physical movements in the past few days. It can make the chakra run throughout the body and efficiently exercise all the meridians. Its only drawback is that it is very difficult. It requires extremely strong body control to do it standardly and achieve the purpose of tempering the meridians. Among you, only Akai can do this. Everyone looked at Akai, but they were not disappointed. After all, if the teacher said so, there must be a solution. As expected, Xia Yan smiled again and said, "Fortunately, the training suits you are wearing have a movement copy function. Just like Obito used this function to learn Konoha fluid technique before, you will use it to learn and master this set of meridian training methods next." Everyone looked at each other excitedly. They have been curious about this function for a long time. So next, Xia Yan and Kushina divided the work and cooperated to activate the movement copy function for everyone like last time, and made subtle adjustments according to the differences in their meridians one by one. After a long time, the preparations were completed. Everyone lined up in a row, and only Kai stood in front of them. Xia Yan made a final reminder. This set of movements is actually quite precious, so everyone should cherish this opportunity. Also, Kai can't always lead you to practice, so you have to experience it with your heart and master this set of movements as soon as possible. In the future, it may still require your contribution to popularize it in the school. Everyone listened to the teacher's serious words, and nodded vigorously to show that they understood. So Xia Yan stepped back a few steps, took out an MP3 card, and injected chakra into it. Then, Mike Dai's passionate voice rang out. The second set of radio gymnastics for Konoha Ninja School students. The times are calling, ready, go. Chapter 87 Remarks on the release. After 50 days, this book will finally be available at 12 noon tomorrow, November 25. As a pure newcomer like Xiaozi, I don't know anything, I work hard, and every chapter is a new challenge. To be honest, I'm also surprised that I can advance all the way and even reach Xinjiang. By the way, I wrote in the book that Xiaozi didn't know and he would become a master of sealing techniques, but he won the championship. I wrote in the book that Fenbaho would be popular, but it all turned out to be cold. Let's get back to the point. Thank you for your support for this book these days, and for enduring many newbie poison points in it. Without your follow-up reading, comments, recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, and rewards, I would not have been able to stick to this. Thank you. As for the future plot, it will still take a relaxed route with a hint of black belly. Teach a little, and slowly cultivate a group of strong people with a unique style. Open a store and gradually change the ninja world through business. I hope everyone can accompany Xia Yan to the end. As for the update plan after the release, there are 0 drafts. I will see if I can manage to update 3 times tomorrow. I will keep updating twice in the future. After all, my typing speed is slow, so I will make sure I get full attendance first. I will see if I can evolve into a 3 update beast in the future. If there are friends who want to support the book, I can understand, but I still have to ask for a first order to make the book's performance look better. It seems that there is nothing more to say. Then I'm going to get back to typing. Arkham Monk Chapter 88. I don't want to dance anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In the ninja school, on the rooftop of the teaching building, cheerful and rhythmic music and Mighty Day's heroic and powerful commands were echoing in the air. Listening to his father's voice, Akai was like a chicken with blood, doing various gymnastics moves according to the beat. The classmates behind him were amazed, watching their bodies involuntarily follow Akai's various movements. It really moves on its own. I can't control myself. It's amazing. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Xia Yan clapped his hands and said, "Everyone concentrate and try to understand the key points of this set of movements." Yes, everyone finally suppressed their excitement and began to seriously study this set of movements. Preparation section, stretching exercises, limb exercises, shoulder exercises, chest expansion exercises. As the simple and cheerful gymnastics exercises passed, Kushina's expression gradually became strange. Because I always feel that there is a strong sense of gap. After all, Xia Yan just talked about the ancient monk's cultivation method, cultivating immortals, and combining the 8 gates of Dunjia. It was so mysterious that her expectations for this set of movements were raised to the sky. The result is just like this. Why does it feel no different from the health exercises done by the elderly in the park? Advertisements are for reference only, please refer to the actual product. Kushina couldn't help but get close to Xia Yan and whispered, "Xia Yan, why is your set of movements so ordinary? What's so ordinary about it?" Xia Yan was checking everyone's meridian scrolls, and pretended to be surprised when he heard it. "Kushina, don't you see that this set of exercises is very effective? Although each section of the exercise focuses on certain parts of the body, it basically covers the upper and lower limbs, so that all parts of the body can be properly exercised. And these movements are beautiful, which organically combines the 2 concepts of pursuing morphological beauty and pursuing effectiveness. It allows students to shape beautiful postures while exercising, greatly improving their aesthetic awareness. It is really a set of radio gymnastics suitable for all ages. So why is it radio gymnastics? Where is the meridian exercise method?" Kushina couldn't help but complain. Okay. Xia Yan stopped teasing Kushina and smiled. "What I said just now is just an external statement." "External statement?" Kushina asked curiously. Xia Yan explained. "After all, this set of radio gymnastics is to be popularized in ninja schools in the future, so we have to consider the issue of confidentiality. If other villages learn it all at once, wouldn't everyone be back to the same starting line? So Mr. Dai and I took a lot of effort to design this set of seemingly simple movements based on the training principles of the 8 gates. Although this set of movements itself is also very good, it is very suitable for students to use as a warm-up exercise. But what you can see is just the appearance. The real key is the invisible muscle movements in their bodies, which stimulate the chakra to spontaneously flow along specific meridian routes. Most of these muscle movements are precise and counterintuitive. Basically, they can only be learned through the action copying function of the training suit, and repeated movements to form body memory. It is difficult to teach others through oral narration. Even for Akai, who has a basic knowledge, some key points were learned by Mr. Dai wearing the training suit and letting him copy many times, not to mention others. In addition, The training suits will also wipe various confidentiality mechanisms, such as chakra recognition, self-destruction when leaving school, and other measures. So unless other villages crack the principle of the training suit, it will be difficult to learn this set of simple radio gymnastics. Kushina suddenly realized that this set of seemingly ordinary radio gymnastics actually has so many details. This made her stare at Xia Yan's focused profile, and she was a little moved. Showing stories, keening cards, school enterprise plans, research groups, and now radio gymnastics, Xia Yan is obviously just an elective teacher, but he always spares no effort to help students grow. This made her think that if she had such a teacher when she was in school, thinking of what new things Xia Yan will come up with in the future, to be honest, she is a little envious of the future ninja school students. Xia Yan seemed to have a tacit understanding with Kushina, and took out her tights from somewhere, and said in a seductive tone, "Kushina, are you also interested in this set of radio gymnastics?" "No problem, I have prepared the tights for you." Kushina took a few steps back expressionlessly. Thinking of the eye-catching scene of all the students in the school wearing tights in the future, she felt less envious of the future ninja school students. At this moment, the groans of pain coming from the students attracted Kushina's attention again. Then she saw a very strange scene. Except for Akai, the other students were still doing various gymnastics movements accompanied by cheerful music, but their faces were grinning and distorted, and they groaned in pain from time to time. What kind of dark gymnastics is this? The strong incoordination of everyone's expressions and movements made Kushina feel a little creepy. So she quickly said to Xia Yan, "Xia Yan, look, what's wrong with them?" Xia Yan, who was looking down at the scroll, didn't even raise his head, but explained nonchalantly, "This is a normal reaction. After all, everyone, under the leadership of Akai, used a lot of muscles that are rarely used in normal times, so those muscles started to ache after a few times, and it will be fine after a while. And many of these muscles need to undergo extreme training, making the commonly used muscles extremely tired, forcing the body to only use the target muscles, so that they can gradually learn how to actively control them. So in addition to enhancing students' control over their bodies, it also has the effect of strengthening confidentiality." Xia Yan looked up at everyone's painful expressions and smiled slightly. But the reaction does seem to be a bit intense. It seems that when it is popularized in the future, it must be done step by step, and several transitional versions should be designed to let students exercise those muscle parts one by one. Kushina couldn't help rolling her eyes. She bet that Li Wang must have done it on purpose. A bad guy. But she also breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Fortunately, there'll not be a hellish scene in the future where all the students are doing gymnastics to the cheerful music and screaming. Although she also wants to see it. Then she heard Xia Yan said, "After all, due to the need for confidentiality, most students don't know the real purpose of this set of radio gymnastics. What they know is probably that the stupid school has come up with a new trick and asks them to do a set of ordinary radio gymnastics every morning." Kushina was slightly startled when she heard this. Doesn't this mean that everyone doesn't know what Xia Yan has done for them? I always feel that it's not worth it for him. But looking at Xia Yan's back as he came forward to check everyone's movements, Kushina soon smiled with relief. Xia Yan must have thought about this. Since he doesn't care, all she can do is to do her duty as an assistant teacher and assist teacher Xia Yan in his work. I believe that everyone will understand Xia Yan's good intentions one day. Not long after, the music stopped. The students also worked hard and finally finished a set of radio gymnastics. Except for Kai, who looked like nothing happened, all the other students were breathing heavily and sweating profusely, as if they had just been pulled out of the water. However, due to the limitations of the training suits, they could only stand straight in place. Then Xia Yan snapped his fingers. Everyone suddenly regained control of their bodies and suddenly couldn't stand and sat on the ground. After their butts touched the ground, everyone immediately sighed in comfort. The rough ground on the rooftop felt even more comfortable than Dustin's mattress. But before they could feel comfortable for too long, they heard the devilish words of teacher Xia Yan. "Okay, rest for 5 minutes, and then do the second exercise." Ah! The miserable screams echoed on the rooftop. Yui Kyorane burst into tears. "No, teacher. I'm so tired." Obito also lay on the ground, muttering to himself, "I don't want to dance anymore." Lin and Ebisu, the two more mature children, also smiled bitterly at this time. Ashuma was bargaining with Xia Yan. "Teacher, I think this set of movements is so effective. It feels like all the meridians are opened up at once. It seems that doing it once a day, no, once a week is enough." Other students also echoed, saying that Ashuma's words made a lot of sense. Unfortunately, Xia Yan's reply was so cold. There are 4 minutes and 15 seconds left in the break time. ... Everyone was silent. Knowing that the teacher would not buy their tricks, everyone decided to save some energy and rest as much as possible. Then Xia Yan used the storage card to conjure up bottled water and towels and asked Kushina to distribute them to the students. He and the still energetic Akai walked aside and made some minor adjustments to the radio gymnastics movements based on the feedback they had just received from the Meridian Scroll. Soon, the 5-minute break time passed in the blink of an eye. Lin and Ebisu both stood up tremblingly, while the others were still lying on the ground, looking like they couldn't get up. It was unclear whether they really couldn't stand up or were just pretending. However, Xia Yan was well prepared. He slowly raised his hand and snapped his fingers under everyone's increasingly fearful eyes. Another wailing sounded on the rooftop. As the action copying function on the training suit started working again, everyone lost control of their bodies and stood up involuntarily. The rapid movements naturally pulled the overloaded muscles again, causing their bodies to ache again. But everyone also knew that this was just the beginning. As teacher Xia Yan injected chakra into a card, Mike Dai's passionate voice sounded again. The second set of radio gymnastics for Konoha Ninja School students. The times are calling. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Everyone cried at the same time, and their bodies danced involuntarily with Akai's movements. At the same time, the muscles in their bodies kept protesting with a sore feeling, but unfortunately they couldn't make a decision. It felt like every beat and every movement was so long, this soreness, it couldn't be stopped at all. Chapter 89 Rumors. In the following time, everyone did several radio gymnastics in tears under the coercion of the devil Xia Yan. In the end, everyone didn't even have the strength to cry like ghosts and wolves. They all hung their heads and danced to the beat of the music like one-to-one puppets. So although the rooftop was echoing with cheerful music, the scene was very gloomy. Even Akai, who led the exercise, was panting at this time, not as relaxed as before. Just as the music stopped again, everyone finished the radio gymnastics again, and then looked at Xia Yan with numb faces. It was like a ruthless exercise machine. Xia Yan was holding the scroll and analyzing the data on it. After a moment of silence, he said, "Today's harvest is not small, and a lot of useful data has been obtained. But it seems that everyone has reached the limit, and probably can't do another set." The students' ears moved when they heard this, and then their eyes began to regain their brightness, and finally the whole person came alive and began to nod hurriedly. Then Xia Yan said, "Then do half a set." Everyone shuddered when they heard it, and then looked at Xia Yan with resentment. Xia Yan felt like he was being stared at by 5 Toshio in tights, and he felt a little scared, so he said awkwardly, "Okay, I'm just kidding." Then he snapped his fingers, and everyone's body softened like noodles, and sat on the ground all of a sudden. After a series of comfortable sighs, everyone felt that their butts had been rooted to the ground, and they would never stand up again in this life. Kushina on the side also hurriedly handed everyone water and towels, asking about their well-being. Xia Yan knew that the way to educate is nothing more than whips and candles, no, candy. So when he saw that everyone looked listless, he knew it was time to let everyone taste something sweet. So he said, "I know everyone has worked hard, but these efforts will not be in vain." Everyone listened to Xia Yan's teacher's cliched expired chicken soup, and still felt unmotivated. However, Xia Yan had expected this and said with a smile, "If you don't believe me, why don't you open your Meridian Scroll and have a look?" Everyone finally became interested after hearing this. They all took out the Meridian Scrolls in the slots on their waists with their teeth bared, slowly injected chakra and started to read. Ashuma, who opened the scroll first, was surprised. "Why did my combat power suddenly increase by 4 points? I also increased, but it was 5 points." Ebisu also suppressed his excitement. Then Hong and Lin also said that they also increased by 5 points, and Obito increased by 3 points. Sure enough, their efforts just now are not in vain. The immediate positive feedback finally made everyone smile, and the torture just now didn't feel so terrible. And the original green-faced and fat big devil Xia Yan also turned back into the handsome teacher Xia Yan. "Teacher, this set of radio gymnastics is so effective." Ashuma exclaimed, "If we continue like this, won't our combat power soon exceed 1000? What are you thinking? How can such a good thing happen?" Xia Yan shook his head and smiled, "You are just starting to exercise, so the effect is so obvious. In the future, as the capacity of your meridians expands, the effect of this set of movements will become less and less effective until it completely loses its effect. The joy on everyone's face faded a little, but they were not too disappointed. It's better to say that this makes them feel more at ease. And everyone soon discovered that compared to the previous aimless efforts, now they can intuitively see their progress through numerical values, which is also a very important advantage of this set of equipment. Then Xia Yan said, in addition to dynamic exercises, don't forget that we also have static exercises. When your meridians are more stable in the future, we will continue to heighten the meridians by actively circulating the chakra in our bodies. Everyone was moved to know that teacher Xia Yan had arranged everything for them. It felt that teacher Xia Yan in front of them looked more amiable. But Xia Yan still felt that this big pie was not enough, and said, and in order to stimulate your interest in learning and training, I decided to add a prize. At the end of this semester, I will give certain rewards to the students with the best performance. For example, a special training suit like the one I'm wearing. Really? The boys' eyes lit up and they showed excited expressions. If you have a set of such a battle suit, wouldn't you be the most handsome boy in the whole ninja school? Seeing the boys so excited, Xia Yan felt that his first to fourth generations of Robin had been settled. The future of the Bad family is promising. I just don't know who will be the second generation of Robin. It's a pity that the girls are not interested in this, but Xia Yan also has a way. Hong and Lin, don't you want to know the subsequent story of the Mako and the dog demon? Xia Yan said in a seductive tone. The two immediately became energetic. Hong asked eagerly, Teacher, didn't the meteorite destroy the world in the end? Xia Yan said slowly, maybe so, but it's also possible that all this is just a precognitive dream that Sadako had on the first day she traveled to the Warring States period. Don't you want to know whether Sadako, who knows everything, can change the fate of the world's destruction? Hong and Lin both smiled, not expecting that there would be such a thing. Xia Yan smiled and said, whether Mako and Dog Demon 2. Ray. 0 starting journey to another world can appear depends on your efforts. Oh. The two girls immediately held each other's hands and made up their minds to see this story. Kushina on the side also quietly clenched her fist to cheer them up. Seeing that everyone was full of energy, Xia Yan also nodded with satisfaction. Then he said, I wanted to teach you the sealing technique during the remaining time, but judging from your appearance, you probably don't have the energy for it. Then today's sealing technique research group's activities will end here. But before that, I have to give you something and give you a few words of advice. After Xia Yan finished speaking, he conjured up a large bottle of green mysterious liquid, about 3 or 4 liters, in front of everyone's curious eyes. This is Mr. Dai's secret recipe for green juice, which is a mixture of 72 kinds of ingredients such as young barley leaves, young sweet potato leaves, young cabbage leaves, etc. It is very helpful for repairing the body, restoring physical strength, and replenishing nutrition. So each of you will get a bottle later, and remember to drink it when you go home. The students showed expressions of gratitude. They didn't expect the teacher to be so thoughtful. Ashuma often used transformation techniques to go to the tavern to play, and had already tasted the taste of this stuff, so he asked Xia Yan with a bitter face. Teacher, how many days do we have to drink such a big bottle? Xia Yan showed a matter-of-fact look. This is of course the amount for today, everyone remember to drink it all. Yes, although it felt a bit too much, everyone still agreed obediently. Only Ashuma felt like a bereaved mother, and it seemed that teacher Xia Yan's face began to become ferocious again. Finally, Xia Yan reminded everyone. Since the content of our foundation building plan is also confidential, you can't disclose it to others as you did before. After saying that, he also looked at a certain Obito with emphasis. Obito stuck out his tongue and smiled awkwardly. After that, Xia Yan distributed bottles of green juice to everyone, and announced that the research group activities were officially over. In the evening, Uchiha clan. Obito dragged his tired body, holding a large bottle of green juice, and was staggering towards home. At this time, he heard several tribesmen gathered not far away, as if they were discussing something. He didn't take it seriously at first, but he seemed to hear teacher Xia Yan's name vaguely, so he became a little curious, took a few steps closer, and pricked up his ears to listen. No way, how could Xia Yan lose to a ninja younger than him? How could this be false? I heard that someone went to ask him directly. Although he didn't admit it, his face seemed as black as ink. Is that Yushin Xia Yan so powerful? Why haven't I heard of his name before? It seems that he is a ninja who has been on long-term missions outside, and only recently returned to the ninja school to teach. Humph, how powerful can a guy who is willing to be a teacher in a ninja school be? That's true. It seems that Xia Yan is too weak. He is so arrogant at ordinary times. Speaking of which, it seems that there is a child in the clan who is very close to Yushin Xia Yan recently. It seems that he is undergoing special training with him. What? What qualifications does he have to teach the children of our Uchiha clan? It seems to be Obito. Ah, that's okay. Obito's face turned black when he heard this, so he turned around and walked away. As a result, he bumped into a tall figure and sat down on the ground with a thump. The big bottle of green juice also fell to the ground, rolling to the feet of the man. The sound of the bottle falling to the ground attracted the attention of those people, and they all looked over. Captain Fuinjutsu. After they saw the figure of the person come in, they all shouted in awe. Fuinjutsu was a three-Magisma strongman at a young age, and his strength was extremely strong, so he naturally won their respect. Yeah. Fuinjutsu still had a serious and old-fashioned look, but his face seemed particularly dark today. He first leaned over to pick up the bottle. Then he looked at the mysterious green liquid inside, as if he suddenly remembered some bad memories, and his body trembled slightly. Then he patted the dust on the bottle and handed it to Obito, who had stood up. Thank you. Obito quickly held the bottle. After Fuinjutsu nodded to him, he looked at the group of people just now and said seriously, "If you have time to gossip about others, you might as well spend more time on training." "Yes, we'll go right away." The group of people didn't dare to refute, and after responding, they hurried to the other side. Fuinjutsu looked at their departing figures and shook his head slightly. Then he said, "Obito, I heard that you and Yushin Xia Yan are very close." Obito, who was tiptoeing to leave, froze. He turned around and looked at Fuinjutsu with difficulty, feeling a little tangled. Logically, he should like to clear himself of the relationship. However, he thought of the oath he made today, and finally mustered up the courage to say loudly, "Yes, although the teacher has not admitted it, I have already regarded him as my master." Then he saw Fuinjutsu's big hand reaching out to him. Obito closed his eyes subconsciously, and soon felt someone touching his head. And the technique is not bad. Obito opened his eyes and saw that Fuinjutsu's expression softened a lot, although he was still very fierce. Then he heard Fuinjutsu say, "In that case, then you should learn well from teacher Xia Yan. I'm also looking forward to you, the Uchiha who is the least like Uchiha. What kind of changes will he bring to the family under his education?" Obito was confused. Chapter 90. The Evil Danzo. That night, in the Kinen Tavern, Xia Yan, who was sitting at the bar doing research, was suddenly surrounded by three people. No, it should be said that there was a pig, a deer, and an especially plump butterfly. They were Yamanaka Inoichi, Narashai Kapu, and Akimichi Choza. Since these three guys came to the tavern to play cards every day and were of similar age to Xia Yan, they gradually became familiar with each other. Therefore, Choza was not shy and sat down next to Xia Yan and asked directly, "Boss Xia Yan, I heard that you defeated the guy Uchiha Xia Yan." This question again. Xia Yan sighed softly and put down the glass of 1982 Coke helplessly. God knows how the news came out, and it seems that everyone in the village knew about it in less than a day. Maybe it has something to do with the title of this gossip news. Shocking. Two men sneaked into the woods and did such a thing. Xia Yan, who felt that his reputation was damaged, cursed Danzo countless times in his heart. Yes. Although he did not have any direct evidence, he was sure that Danzo did it. After all, he had just rejected the invitation of the Root Ninja the day before yesterday, and made the other party sticky all over. And the strange speed of the spread of this news also reminded him of the White Fang incident not long ago. Could it be that Danzo still has a group of water soldiers? Then Xia Yan turned his head and looked at the gossiping faces of the three people, Ino, Deer, and Chu, and said, "Speaking of which, you are the 100th person to ask me this question today. Then as a prize, please give each of them a glass of triple concentrated green juice, Mr. Dai." "Okay, I'll send it right away." Mike Dai behind the bar responded. The three people, Ino, Deer, and Chu, immediately turned pale. Recently, a dark game has become popular in the tavern, that is, the loser of the duel has to drink a glass of green juice. Therefore, the three of them have a little psychological shadow about this thing. Not to mention the triple concentrated version. But they didn't forget their purpose. Yamanaka continued to gossip. "So, is it true?" "Of course it's true." Hearing Xia Yan's straightforward answer, the three of them showed surprised expressions. "I didn't expect this to be true."
Although they also witnessed the conflict between Xia Yan and Xia Yan last time, it was in a tavern, and Xia Yan had the home advantage. But this time, they heard that they fought fiercely in the woods. Xia Yan's victory is more meaningful. At this time, Xia Yan said in a mysterious tone, "Then do you want to know how I defeated him?" The three of them were slightly startled, and then nodded repeatedly. "Since it's you, I'll tell you a little bit." Xia Yan cleared his throat and said, "First of all, I attacked first in the first round. I first summoned Xia Madara to the field, and then set an ambush card, and then, the three of Ino, Shikaku and Choco, who were originally listening with expectation, felt something was wrong as they listened." Okimichi Choza even patted Xia Yan's shoulder to interrupt him. Wait. Why are you talking about playing cards? And the rules seem a bit strange. Could it be? Shikaku suddenly thought of a possibility. Then they saw Xia Yan's right hand touch the wrist guard on his left hand. A string of runes appeared on it, and then white smoke exploded. After the smoke dissipated, a jewel disc appeared on his wrist. Then Xia Yan smiled and said, "Well, actually I just asked him to accompany me to test the function of this jewel disc. After all, the conflict was caused in the Gakinen Tavern, so it must be resolved in the Gakinen way." The three were speechless. Then Shikaku and Choza couldn't help but look at him. He worked in the interrogation department, and even without using secret techniques, he could easily tell whether the other party was lying. As a result, he shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't see any signs of Xia Yan lying. "So, TSK, let's go, it's a waste of everyone's feelings." Zhu, Lu, and Chu each left with a glass of green juice, cursing. "Wait, don't you want to continue listening?" Xia Yan stretched out his hand to keep him. "How about another glass of green juice? I'll treat you." As a result, they walked faster. Xia Yan showed a funny smile and prepared to start working again. As a result, someone else came over. "Xia Yan, are you going to use this explanation to get by?" Fuku looked at Xia Yan with a helpless look on his face, and then sat down next to Xia Yan. Xia Yan shrugged and said, "After all, what I said is the truth." Fuku's mouth twitched, feeling that he could not refute. After all, Xia Yan really defeated Xia Yang with a jewel disc. Then he heard Xia Yan say, "Besides, I have a teacher's job and the affairs of the tavern, so I don't have time to get entangled with your Uchiha clan." Fuku also said seriously after hearing this, "Don't worry, I will definitely catch the person who made trouble, although I haven't found any clues yet." This time it was Xia Yan's turn to be speechless. Is there still a need to find? No clues are the biggest clue. Even you, the captain of the police force, can't find any clues, so there are not many people in the whole village who can do this. Think about it again, who among them has a problem with your Uchiha clan? Fuku hesitated for a moment and said, "It seems to be all of them." "Well, your Uchiha clan is really fucking hated." Xia Yan complained in his heart and guided. Then Fuku, "Didn't you find that this time is a bit similar to the previous White Family incident? Also, there are rumors from time to time that are unfavorable to your Uchiha clan. Have you never doubted it?" Fuku finally understood Xia Yan's hint and said hesitantly, "Are you talking about Danzo? Idiot, have you finally figured it out?" Xia Yan picked up the glass of 1982 Coke, drank it all, and said, "The other few may have opinions about your Uchiha clan, but the only one who would use such a shameless method is that one. It should be said that as long as something bad happens to your Uchiha clan, you should first assume that it was done by that one, and you will never suffer any loss." Fuku pondered and said, "Hearing what you said, it is true that there are always rumors that are not good for our Uchiha clan, and there are often all kinds of inexplicable problems when our troops enforce the law." As he spoke, he became more and more enlightened, as if the clouds were clearing and the sun was shining. He thought that the conflicts between his tribesmen and other people in the village were due to personality and prejudice. But after hearing what Xia Yan said, he felt more and more that there was a black hand behind the scenes fanning the flames. Then a deep anger surged in his heart, and he was so angry that he trembled all over. In the hot summer, his hands and feet were cold with cold sweat. "Can this village still be good? What should we Uchiha do to satisfy you?" Then Fuku told Xia Yan about some doubts he encountered in his daily work and asked if it was Danzo's conspiracy. Although Xia Yan felt that 80% of them were coincidences and problems with the police force itself, only 20% were tricky. But he still nodded repeatedly to confirm Fuku's idea. Why did a 60-year-old woman get pregnant unexpectedly? Why did hundreds of sows scream in the middle of the night? Why were the underwear on the balcony frequently stolen?
Why was the old widow's door knocked every night? Behind these events, is it a crazy outbreak or the helplessness of hunger and thirst? Is it the decline of morality or the distortion of human nature? No, these are all Danzo's conspiracies. Well, although it's not so exaggerated. But Xia Yan also felt that Danzo's figure was vaguely behind some of these things. Based on the logic that we should oppose whatever the enemy supports, Xia Yan decided to cause a little trouble for Danzo. So he said to Fuinjutsu, who was frowning, "Fuinjutsu, have you heard of the body chakra? I have only written one chapter since this morning, and there will probably be no more today. I am sleepy, I am going to sleep." Chapter 91 Law Enforcement Recorder. Law Enforcement Recorder. Fuinjutsu frowned and pondered, but he couldn't think of any information related to this word. Xia Yan smiled and explained. According to what you said just now, Fuinjutsu, the problems encountered by the police force can basically be summarized into two types. One is that during the law enforcement process, some people deliberately refused to cooperate, and even encouraged villagers who did not know the truth to fight against the police officers. The second is that after the law enforcement, some people distorted the facts and spread rumors that the police officers were unfair in law enforcement. Fuinjutsu nodded slightly, indicating that this was indeed the case. Xia Yan continued. And the crux of these problems is that your police force has lost its credibility. So no matter what information is unfavorable to you, the villagers accepted it without really thinking about whether it is reasonable. In addition, most of you Uchiha clan members are arrogant, proud, either impulsive and conflicting with the villagers, or disdain to explain so much, so the villagers' misunderstanding has deepened. At this point, Xia Yan couldn't help but complain about the second-generation Okage Senjutsu in his heart. It is a bloodless arrangement to let the Uchiha clan, who are extreme and impulsive, and everyone is mentally ill, take charge of trivial and troublesome police work. After listening to Xia Yan's words, Fuinjutsu nodded repeatedly with deep agreement. So, Xia Yan smiled, since you have no way to explain, let the facts speak for you. As long as the facts can be presented to the villagers in an objective way, they will naturally not be so easily deceived by rumors. And the law enforcement recorder I mentioned has such a function. Is there really such a powerful artifact? Fuinjutsu was yearning, but there was still some doubt in his tone. After all, the only thing he could think of to restore what happened was the Yamanaka clan's secret technique of reading minds. But this technique is a bit brain-wasting, and it is obviously not something that the police force can use on a daily basis. Fuinjutsu, you are still so young, you should be more open-minded. Xia Yan said helplessly. Actually, this is not a difficult thing to do. For example, aren't the popular movies recently recording images and sounds and playing them for everyone to watch? And I heard that the Chunin exam venue is also planning to introduce a monitoring system, installing cameras in the Death Forest to view the exam process in real time. But these devices are relatively bulky and obviously cannot meet the needs of your police force for law enforcement. But through the sealing technique, a similar effect can actually be achieved. No, it should be said that it is better. At this point, Xia Yan showed a mysterious smile and said to Fuinjutsu, "It may not be so intuitive just to say it. How about this, you come with me, I will show you a big treasure." Fuinjutsu was aroused by Xia Yan, so he followed Xia Yan to the backyard of the tavern. Then he saw Xia Yan start to untie his belt, ! Fuinjutsu immediately took 2 steps back. "Xia Yan, please respect yourself, I already have my kowtow." Fortunately, he soon found that Xia Yan was not really untying his belt, but just pressing a button on the belt buckle, and he was relieved. As Xia Yan pressed a few buttons on his belt, the scene around him gradually began to change. Fuinjutsu came to the tavern to play cards every day, and was used to seeing the scene of the tavern's skin changing, so he was not too surprised. He knew that this was a use of Xia Yan's projection technique. However, as the projected scene gradually became clearer, he still showed a slightly surprised expression. Although the display range was not large, he could still recognize that this was the scene near the bar of the Kinen Tavern. And he soon saw that there were 2 familiar figures in the center of the projection, which were Xia Yan and him. The projections of the 2 people were sitting in front of the bar and having a conversation. And the law enforcement recorder I mentioned has such a function. Is there really such a powerful artifact? Fuinjutsu, you are still so young, you should think more broadly, Fuinjutsu reacted after listening to a few words. Isn't this the content of his conversation with Xia Yan just now? Combined with Xia Yan's previous statement, he quickly understood. So this is the law enforcement recorder you mentioned, Xia Yan? Fuinjutsu looked at Xia Yan's belt with burning eyes. This time it was Xia Yan's turn to take 2 steps back. Then he explained. Not exactly, the law enforcement recorder is just one of the functions of this belt. Xia Yan said that as a hardcore cosser, the badminton multifunctional belt is naturally not just for show, it has many useful functions. And the holographic scene recorder he recently created by combining the perception array and projection technique has also been integrated into it. It is perfect to use it as a law enforcement recorder. Xia Yan continued to introduce. As you can see, Fuinjutsu, the function of this law enforcement recorder is to record the surrounding scenes in great detail, and it can be reproduced at any time through projection. For your police force, this law enforcement recorder has many benefits. First of all, it can naturally safeguard the law enforcement rights and interests of the police force. If there are complaints or disputes in the future, you can directly open the law enforcement recorder to restore the facts. It is clear at a glance who is right and who is wrong. It is not so easy for some people to fan the flames. Secondly, when the villagers know that their every word and action will be recorded, they naturally dare not speak nonsense or obstruct law enforcement, which greatly reduces the difficulty of your law enforcement. Another benefit is that it is convenient for evidence collection. In addition to recording everyone's confession, some clues that were not discovered on the spot can also be discovered by repeatedly watching from an objective perspective, enhancing the ability to solve the case. Finally, Captain Fuinjutsu, you cannot deny that the police force also has some problems in law enforcement, and this law enforcement recorder can just regulate their law enforcement behavior, prevent emotional law enforcement, and reduce conflicts with the villagers. Fuinjutsu nodded while listening to Xia Yan's recommendation. It felt that the benefits Xia Yan mentioned hit their pain points one by one, and it was simply tailor-made for the police force. With this artifact, the Uchiha clan would have no worries. So Fuinjutsu asked eagerly, Xia Yan, how much do you sell this thing for? According to the urgency on Fuinjutsu's face, Xia Yan first filled in 6 zeros for the price of the law enforcement recorder, but he was a little hesitant about how much to fill in the first digit. After all, the cost is also hundreds of thousands of taels. With the idea of taking it slow and steady, Xia Yan reported a conservative figure. 5 million taels. What, 5 million taels? Fuinjutsu took a breath. It's so cheap. Xia Yan said without thinking. It's not expensive at all. After all, to make it so portable, you have to use a lot of precious materials. What, you just said cheap? Xia Yan said it and then realized that he had reported a low price. You know, the reward for an S-level task is mostly only 1 million taels, and it is often shared by several people. I didn't expect Fuinjutsu to think this thing is cheap. Is this the extravagance of the son of the Uchiha clan leader? Sure enough, I still underestimated the 1,000-year heritage of the Uchiha clan. Xia Yan felt that Fuinjutsu, who had a somewhat fierce face, suddenly became handsome. He then asked, "Then Fuinjutsu, how many do you plan to order?" Fuinjutsu pondered for a moment, and based on the number of people in his team, he said, "Then let's start with 7. Ding. An Ashuma is in hand. The previous article was modified. Uchiha Setsuna changed from Uchiha Xia Yan's grandfather to his father. After sorting out the timeline, it was found that Uchiha Setsuna should not be that old. His age was adjusted to be about the same as F4 and Uchiha Fukuyama. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 92 Once and for All. Sealing techniques are so amazing. Fuinjutsu, who had just placed an order, couldn't help but sigh. Keening game consoles, dual discs, tavern skins, law enforcement cameras, and I heard that Xia Yan was also developing new teaching aids at the ninja school. Fuinjutsu began to realize that Xia Yan's room creations were subtly and silently changing Konoha. Just talking about the Keenan Tavern, the nightly turnover of the custom street dropped by 30%, and the combat effectiveness of the male ninjas in the village increased by at least 5 points. The world where only the girls in the custom street were hurt is complete. So this also made him more fortunate that he didn't despise this civilian-born ninja because of the arrogance of the ninja clan. So now he can get Xia Yan's help and obtain artifacts such as law enforcement cameras. At the same time, Fuinjutsu, who realized that sealing techniques are the future outlet, also began to have the idea of picking up some of the sealing techniques textbooks he had learned before and relearning sealing techniques. But this thought only lasted a few seconds, and he recalled the fear of being dominated by the difficult and obscure seal runes, and his body shuddered slightly. By the way, he also has the mission of reviving the Uchiha clan, so the important task of learning the seal technique should be handed over to his future child. Fuinjutsu made a decision in his heart. By the way, he must make him worship Xia Yan as his master at the time. Xia Yan, who was happy about earning an Ashuma, suddenly felt a chill on his back and felt a little palpitation for no reason. Why is it like this again? Could it be that Danzo has another conspiracy? Xia Yan became more and more vigilant and decided to make Danzo look back one day. Then the two began to discuss the details of the customization of the law enforcement recorder. Since the law enforcement recorder was sold at a low price just now, Xia Yan decided to make persistent efforts and sell some value-added functions to Fuinjutsu. For example, as long as 50,000 ryo is added, the logo of the belt buckle can be changed from a white badge to the logo of the police force. That is, there is an Uchiha clan fan engraved in the middle of the blue shuriken. Although Fuinjutsu didn't know why it would cost 50,000 ryo to change the logo, after all, it cost 5 million ryo for one machine, so adding another 50,000 ryo didn't seem to matter. Buy it. Then Xia Yan explained that the price he just mentioned was the basic price, and the belt only had one function, which was a law enforcement recorder. However, as long as he added a little money, he could add a lot of functions to the belt. For example, the police tool package, which included handcuffs, batons, high-intensity flashlights, eye drops, tear gas sprays, first aid kits, flares and other practical gadgets, was priced at 200,000 ryo. Although many of these things were also equipped by the police department, Fuinjutsu found that the ones Xia Yan showed were all modified and customized, so that so many things could be installed on the belt without being cumbersome. For the sake of convenience, Fuinjutsu decided to spend a little more money. Buy it. Then Xia Yan also emphasized a chakra recognition binding function, which could bind this belt to a user and prevent it from being used by others. At first, Fuinjutsu didn't quite understand why this function was needed. After all, he had thought that in addition to law enforcement, this belt could actually be used for battle review and training. In this way, you can check your own actions or analyze the actions of your opponent from an objective perspective. For many ninjas, this can be regarded as an heirloom. It seems a bit too wasteful to use it only for one person. However, Xia Yan quickly reminded him. If there is no such function, then the police officers who go out on duty in the future will all be walking 5 million ryo. I'm afraid that they will be treated as bosses by bounty hunters as soon as they go out. At least Kakuza must be crazy happy. Fuinjutsu felt cold when he heard this, and he also felt that this function is indeed indispensable. After all, there are many members of the police force who are at the level of tuning. Buy. As for the method of using it for the tribe members to practice, he did not give up. The solution is also very simple. That is to spend another 20 million to buy 4 more law enforcement recorders, but only keep them for use in the tribe. Buy. Fuinjutsu, who spent a lot of money again, began to have a blur view of money, and accepted all the functions promoted by the black-hearted businessman Xia Yan. The alarm and MP3 player, with 200 songs built in. With it, everyone can become a man with his own background music when he appears. Buy. The football release device can release footballs of freely adjustable size, which is the best choice for subduing criminals far away without injury. Buy. The colorful glare marquee function has no practical use, but it looks good. Buy. When Fuinjutsu came to his senses, he had already signed his name on a contract. Who am I, where am I, and why are there so many zeros at the end of this contract? 100 million. Fuinjutsu counted several times and finally determined the specific amount of this string of numbers, feeling a little dazed. How did I spend so much money all of a sudden? Xia Yan's smiling face beside him also became a little dazzling. He looked at the list on the contract and doubted whether he had just been hit by an illusion. Why did he feel that many things in it were completely unnecessary? For example, this vibration slimming belt function. But there are no fat people in our police force. For example, this thing that looks like a razor but is actually a hairdryer, and the thing that looks like a hairdryer but is actually a razor. Are you sure it's not a scam? And this colorful glare marquee function, well, this is worth it. Boss Xia Yan, you are really good at doing business. Fuinjutsu smiled helplessly. No, brother Fuinjutsu, you will be. Xia Yan also flattered Fuinjutsu. When he heard Xia Yan talk about Mikoutao, Fuinjutsu's heart suddenly chilled. Mikoutao was a little dissatisfied when she spent a lot of money on Krypton Gold Ninja cards last time. It is obvious that the law enforcement recorder this time cannot get funding for the time being. Even if all the savings are taken out, it is not enough, and I don't know what Macau will say. Alas, it seems that I have to ask my father for money. Seeing that it was getting late, Fuinjutsu felt that he didn't want to see Xia Yan's smiling face for the time being, so he said goodbye to Xia Yan. Before leaving, he reminded Xia Yan, you still have to be careful recently. Your story about the dual disc duel may fool everyone, but it can't be hidden from Xia Yan's father, Xia Sexner. Xia Sexner. Xia Yan repeated, feeling that this character did not appear in the original work. The name is not bad, if only he could drive a Gundam. Fuinjutsu explained. He is the deputy captain of the police force. Many of the clansmen who were dissatisfied with the village are led by him. He is a very difficult person to deal with. Xia Yan suddenly understood. No wonder everyone is so interested in the battle between the two special genin. It turns out that Xia Yan is also a big shot. It can be regarded as a low-profile version of Fuinjutsu. It's a pity that Xia Yan kept saying that no one else would be involved. Xia Yan sighed helplessly. I didn't expect that after enduring for many years, I still went down the traditional fantasy routine of beating the younger and coming back. Why do humans hurt each other? There is no way, it seems that I can only use that trick. In an instant, Xia Yan's eyes became sharper than ever before. Then he recovered his composure and said to Fuinjutsu with a smile, Fuinjutsu, I have a permanent solution, and I need your help. Late that night, when Xia Yan returned to his doorstep, he was stopped by several figures. The three men were about his age, with average to above average looks, and were wearing the clothes of the Uchiha clan. Uchiha Gang, Uchiha Fumi, Uchiha Kui, I came here specifically to ask for. Before they could finish their words, they saw a figure suddenly appear in front of Xia Yan. Captain Fuinjutsu. The three of them looked a little panicked. Fuinjutsu shook his head helplessly, disappointed with these clansmen who came to Xia Yan without verifying the rumors they had just heard. He walked over and reprimanded them solemnly. Soon, Xia Yan saw the three men glaring at him fiercely and left indignantly. Thank you for your trouble, Captain Fuinjutsu. Xia Yan smiled and thanked. No, it's a Uchiha clan that have caused you trouble, and it's just that we consumed some chakra to create a shadow clone. Fuinjutsu waved his hand, and looked at the smiling Xia Yan with a strange look. Because Fuinjutsu didn't expect that the permanent solution Xia Yan said was to let him use a shadow clone to pick him up and drop him off at get off work in the future. It was indeed permanent. After all, Xia Yan just talked a few times. He was the one who worked hard. At this moment, Fuinjutsu became more and more aware that Xia Yan's brain circuit was different from that of ordinary ninjas. Could this be the secret of his ability to think of those strange room creations? Mental patients have brought thinking. Fuinjutsu shook his head helplessly, and then said to Xia Yan, since Xia Yan is home, I also want to remove the shadow clone. Wait, Xia Yan suddenly clasped his hands together again. Since you were going to pick me up tomorrow, just buy me breakfast. Bang. Fuinjutsu's shadow clone disappeared expressionlessly. Huh. Did he hear what I said clearly? And I haven't even said what breakfast to buy. Here, men. Xia Yan spread his hands helplessly and pushed the door open to enter the house. Chapter 93 Training Mission inside the Uchiha clan territory. Fuinjutsu, who had long since left the Gakinen Tavern, was walking on the dark street holding Macau Uchiha's hand. The two are very busy at work during the day, and at night Fuinjutsu had to play cards for the family's rise, so only now did they have some time to spend together. Mikao voice echoed in the silent street. Then Kushina and I hurriedly took the coupon to the newly opened coffee shop. As a result, the clerk told us that the coupon for buying 2 cups of latte for 0.01 tael was a printing error, which was really annoying. Mikao, who was complaining, realized that Fuinjutsu beside her was just timid and absent-minded. So her eyebrows began to frown, and a pair of beautiful eyes flashed with dangerous colors. Then she showed a kind smile and said in Fuinjutsu's ear in a particularly gentle voice, Fuinjutsu, are you listening? Fuinjutsu shuddered when he heard this, and then he came back to his senses. Seeing Makao's eyes narrowed as she smiled, he couldn't help but complain in his heart. The world only knows the fierce reputation of Fuinjutsu, the fierce side one, but they don't know that Macao, who looks gentle and generous at ordinary times, is scary when she gets angry. Just like an elegant cat suddenly showing its sharp claws. Fortunately, Fuinjutsu started to pay attention to Macao when she was 5 years old when he was 10 years old, so he knew her temper very well. So he said apologetically, sorry, I thought of something about work. In fact, although he was holding Makao's hand just now, he was thinking about Xia Yan. Not long ago, he promised to use his shadow clone to pick up Xia Yan to and from get off work recently. In order to thank him, Xia Yan said that he would add a special function to his belt as a gift. Thinking of Xia Yan's various novel and interesting inventions, Fuinjutsu, who has always lacked material desires, couldn't help but look forward to it. But he didn't lie. After all, although the belt has been equipped with dozens of functions, it is essentially a law enforcement recorder. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a work matter. But after hearing what Fuinjutsu said, Mikao turned her head away and pouted her lips. Work, which one is more important, work or me? Although a life-threatening question appeared, Fuinjutsu was happy in his heart. He knew that Mikao's expression meant that she was not as angry as before, and as long as he coaxed her, she would be fine soon. After all, when he scared Mikao to tears when they were young, he also followed this process. He even suspected that Mikao was pretending to cry before. So Fuinjutsu looked around and made sure that there was no one around, then he smiled and said some earthy love words in a soft voice. The dog-licking look would definitely surprise people who knew him. No wonder he could only date Mikao in the middle of the night. Fortunately, Mikao fell for Fuinjutsu's domineering captain who was only gentle to her, and she was almost coaxed after a few words. However, at this moment, Fuinjutsu suddenly stopped and was slightly stunned. It turned out that the shadow clone had just sent Xia Yan home and came back on his own. What's wrong with Fuinjutsu? Mikao asked when she saw that he looked a little strange. Nothing. Fuinjutsu shook his head slightly. He thought about it and decided not to tell Mikao that he would be driving a man to and from get off work in the future. Then Fuinjutsu thought about Xia Yan's last request for him to help buy breakfast, and he was speechless. But since he even agreed to use the shadow clone to pick him up, it didn't seem like a big deal to bring him breakfast. But Fuinjutsu had rice, bonito and miso soup for breakfast at home every day, so it didn't seem appropriate to bring a portion for Xia Yan, but he was not very familiar with the breakfast shops outside. Out of the habit of doing the best he could, Fuinjutsu suddenly had an idea and said to Mikao, "By the way, Mikao, you like to eat breakfast outside, so which breakfast do you think is the best?" Mikao was slightly stunned when she heard this, and then her heart was sweet. Has this guy Fuinjutsu come to his senses? He even knows how to buy breakfast to make me happy. Mikao raised her slender green finger and pointed at her chin, looking up slightly and thinking, there are several breakfasts that I like. But recently I'm obsessed with the pancakes sold by the bakery near the village entrance, and I think the blueberry flavor is the best. The bakery at the village entrance, blueberry flavor pancakes, right? Fuinjutsu murmured and repeated several times. Mikao looked at Fuinjutsu's serious memorization and couldn't help but smile sweetly. Then she took Fuinjutsu's arm and continued to walk forward. But Mikao, who looked so happy at this time, didn't know that she would be hungry all morning the next day, and she still didn't wait for the breakfast she imagined. At the same time, in a mansion in the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Gang, Uchiha Wen, and Uchiha Kui, who had just appeared in front of Xia Yan's house, were half kneeling in front of a middle-aged man with a gloomy temperament. Really? So Fuinjutsu is here too. I wanted you to weigh that quality of Yushin Xia Yan and see if he is qualified to be Xia Yan's whetstone. Uchiha Setsuna smiled coldly after listening to the reports of the three people. But it doesn't matter. Just find another opportunity. I don't believe Fuinjutsu can always protect him. At the same time, at Xia Yan's home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, accompanied by the cheerful music and the distinctive voice of Mighty, Xia Yan was doing radio gymnastics in the front yard in a methodical manner. Yes, radio gymnastics. After all, Xia Yan's radio gymnastics meridian training method was developed recently after his research breakthrough in the perception array and his knowledge of the 8 gates of ninjutsu. Therefore, Xia Yan, like the students, also needs to use this method to expand his meridian system to make up for his mediocre chakra talent. Measured by the level of ki training, it is the 4th level of ki training, which is just a little better than Ebisu. At the same time, because he has passed the puberty period, the meridians are basically fixed, and he needs to spend more effort than the students to get the same improvement. But thinking that he may need to demonstrate in person in the future to teach the static exercises, to show everyone how the chakra should be circulated in the meridians. In order to avoid being discovered by the students, the teacher Xia Yan is so meticulous, Xia Yan had to work overtime to train hard. Strive to become a rough man as soon as possible. Fortunately, compared with the students, he has another advantage. That is, if you observe carefully, you will find that Xia Yan's radio gymnastics movements are open and close, and the moves are fierce, which is obviously different from what the students have learned. Because this is actually the first version of radio gymnastics created by Xia Yan and Mike Day, combining the bodybuilding boxing of the 8 gates of Dunjie and the theory of meridian expansion. With the high-level guidance of Xia Yan's meridian expansion theory, Mike Day was able to simplify the 8 gates bodybuilding boxing, delete the repeated errors and omissions caused by empiricism, and make it more concise. The first version of the radio gymnastics is not inferior to the original 8-door bodybuilding boxing, but can gather the whole body's strength into a line through the circulation of meridians, which is more powerful and has become a terrifying physical skill with great practical significance. So Xia Yan also called it the killing radio gymnastics. It's a pity that this set of killing radio gymnastics has high requirements for meridians, which is not something that the fragile meridian system of most ninja school students can bear. Now only Akai is qualified to learn it. Therefore, in order to keep it secret and take care of their immature bodies, Xia Yan and Mike Dai once again deleted and modified it to make a castrated version that students can learn. Therefore, the training effect is naturally discounted. However, Xia Yan and Mike Dai also left a backdoor in it. As long as the students can reach the perfection of the deleted version of the radio gymnastics, they can understand the essence of the killing radio gymnastics from it. Of course, they can also learn it by paying to sign up for Mike Dai's physical training class. With this enhanced version of the radio gymnastics training method, Xia Yan's meridian widening speed finally barely keeps up with the students' progress, but daily hard training is still indispensable. At this time, there were still 2 little creatures in the front yard. Number 1 was sitting on a small bench nearby, wearing a compact power detector on his head, monitoring Xia Yan's training like he did during class. Master, the chakra circulation of the Chongmen and Fush points of your spleen meridian has slowed down, and the movements are not done properly. He yawned slightly. Got it. Xia Yan focused his mind and focused on controlling the corresponding muscle bundles. Okay, it's normal, keep it up. Number 1 reminded again. Number 2 was reporting their research work today beside Xia Yan. Because the research on the shadow clone technique has reached a bottleneck again, our research focus today is to continue to simplify and improve the accuracy of the perception array. Also, we simulated the meridian operation mode of the static exercise through the prototype, and temporarily ruled out 4,523 options. It is expected that there should be no problem in completing it before the students are taught in a few months. Thank you for your hard work. Xia Yan said while doing radio gymnastics. By the way, where is No. 3? Hasn't the training clothes been washed for so long? No. 2 shrugged and said, didn't you ask him to practice the nature change of water escape while washing clothes? You also said that you wanted to develop the technique of drum washing machine. I just saw that he had just finished washing clothes, but the practice didn't produce any results, so I told him to clean the toilet for you, so that he can continue to practice. ... Are you a devil? Xia Yan complained in his heart. He believed that the child's dark personality was caused by the error caused by the sealing ball array, and it was definitely not his fault. Number 2 spread his hands again and said, it's your fault, you're old enough to still master a change in the nature of Earth Escape. And you only know one move of Earth Escape. Hard beheading technique. You know, this is the only D-level 5 elements escape technique. It's almost expelled from the ranks of Earth Escape. What would you say if students ask you about it in the future? Don't scold me, don't scold me. Xia Yan said helplessly, alas, it seems that number 3 will have to suffer. Number 1 and number 2 nodded in agreement. Meridian widening work, property change development, and the 3rd version of the energy-saving shadow clone technique that was almost successfully developed. Xia Yan, who felt that he had a lot of training tasks again, sighed helplessly. So time flew, and soon it was late November, chapter 94. The 3rd generation. This chapter is emitted late November, in the Okige's office. Young people nowadays are developing really well. As usual, the 3rd Okage Saratobi Hiruzen was diligently using the crystal ball to observe the people's sentiments in Konoha, and he couldn't help but sigh. In the crystal ball on the table, the playground of the ninja school was emerging, and the scene of the bathhouse not far away. In the corridor of the bathhouse, a group of young girls in bathrobes were walking towards the open-air bathing area. The crystal ball's vision was closely following them, and they would soon reach the open-air bathing area. Saratobi Hiruzen's pupils gradually enlarged, but his expression became more and more righteous. He knew that many people with ulterior motives were spreading rumors about him, saying that he always used the crystal ball to spy on girls. But this was just a misunderstanding of him by the world. Yes, the third Hokage was actually just observing the development of the younger generation to indirectly understand the true situation of Konoha. After all, Konoha is not a monolithic entity. The power of the ninja clan is so intertwined that the second generation of Hokage has been committed to cultivating civilian ninjas as a countermeasure. In addition, when Sarutobi Hiruzen was appointed as the Hokage in a critical moment, in order to stabilize Konoha, he had to share a lot of power with his partners, who were now the elders. So although he is called the strongest Hokage, his control over Konoha is not as strong as people imagine. In order to avoid fraud by the people below, Sarutobi Hiruzen had to wrong himself and learn about the true face of Konoha from the open-air bath, a place without any disguise. For example, he learned from the development of young people that Konoha has been developing well in recent years and has sufficient food, so it can keep up with the nutritional needs of young people. Compared with boring paper data, this approach is undoubtedly much more intuitive. Very intuitive. And this is not only about Konoha, but also about the general trend of the ninja world. From the situation in Konoha, it can be inferred that the scars suffered by various countries in the Second Ninja World War should have healed almost. For revenge, to gain more benefits, or to divert conflicts in the village, the major ninja villages may start a war again at any time. If things go wrong, the Third Ninja World War may break out in a few years. So Sarutobi Hiruzen's job is even more related to the peace of the ninja world. For this reason, his eyes were wide open, and his eyeballs were almost glued to the crystal ball, not daring to miss a single detail. Who knows if the bathrobe contains a huge secret that can save the ninja world. But just as the crystal ball's vision followed the girls to the open-air bath, the picture suddenly went black. Damn, it's like this again. Sarutobi Hiruzen almost spit out a mouthful of blood. Why are all these bathhouses and bathhouses equipped with shielding magic arrays recently? Who did it? What is his purpose in doing this? Who instructed him? Did he obtain permission from the relevant departments? Who is he guarding against? What, guarding against the Hyuga clan? That's fine. Alas. Another happy day is over. The Sandmi sighed, put the crystal ball away helplessly, thought about it, picked up the report of the Sarutobi clan and read it. After all, in addition to being the Sandmi Hokage, he is also the head of the Sarutobi clan, so he naturally has to pay attention to the development of the Sarutobi clan. Sometimes he is too busy with work on both sides, and he can't switch his identity. It is forgivable that he accidentally uses the name of Hokage to give the Sarutobi clan a little policy bias. After all, the family is the capital for him to fight against the old guys in the elders. This is also for Konoha. Looking through the family's report this month, seeing that all aspects are thriving, Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't help but nod with satisfaction. It turns out that he, the head of the clan, is well managed. In addition to the crystal ball, his life has been pretty good recently. The eldest son Shina's Yuki is a well-known talent of the younger generation, so he naturally doesn't have to worry about it. Ashuma, the naughty second child, has been much more obedient recently, and even practices very late every day before going home. And the look in his eyes when he looked at him was full of respect, which made him very pleased. Although he felt a little embarrassed after learning the reasons from Baiwako, Sarutobi Hiruzen finally decided to maintain the dignity of his father and did not tell Ashuma the truth. In addition, Baiwako seemed to be tinkering with some school enterprise cooperation plan with the sealing technique teacher recently. He often works until late and even does not go home. This made Sarutobi Hiruzen feel that his old waist has been much better recently. At this time, a revenue point with a significant increase in the report attracted his attention. Hey, why is Sasab Reading suddenly selling so well? It even topped the bookstore rankings. You know, this book has been on sale for a long time, and the market reviews have always been mediocre. How could it suddenly become popular? Then Sarutobi Hiruzen recalled that Baiwako seemed to have said before that there was a way to increase the sales of Sasab Reading, so he let her do it. Could this be the effect of Baiwako's method? Sarutobi Hiruzen began to get curious. Then he remembered that there seemed to be a box of new edition samples of Sasab Reading in his office. He soon found the box in the corner, which was filled with dozens of copies of Sasab Reading. He picked up one and flipped through it. It feels like there is no difference from the previous ones in terms of cover and content. Did late Biwa spend money on publicity? It was not until Sarutobi Hiruzen turned to the last page that he discovered the difference from the previous version. On the originally blank last page, there was a large square composed of many small black and white squares, which felt like some kind of cipher symbol. And there was also a cartoon character portrait below. It looks a bit familiar. Sarutobi Hiruzen identified it carefully and found, isn't this his father? The cartoon Sarutobi Sasuke on the page was wearing a golden armor, carrying a Ruya staff on his shoulder, and there was a Bible box next to him, which read, "Hello everyone, I'm Day Keening Cards. This is a brand new game you have never played before. Just experience it for 3 minutes, and you will fall in love with this game like me." There was also a line of text at the bottom. Take this book to the bar counter of the Keenan Tavern to exchange for a Sarutobi Sasuke theme commemorative card pack. Sarutobi Hiruzen. ? He hesitated for a moment before remembering that this so-called Keening card seemed to be something that Xia Yan, the teacher of the sealing technique, had tinkered with not long ago. At first, it was a teaching aid to help students learn to practice drawing runes. But recently, it seems that another tavern has been opened to promote this game. And it seems that there is also cooperation with the ninja school, which is part of the school enterprise cooperation plan of Late Biwa. Because Late Biwa is following up, he didn't pay too much attention. So it seems that the way Late Biwa said before to increase sales should be to promote this Keenan cards. People who bought the book will naturally go to the Keenan Tavern to have a look when they see there are gifts. And those who want to get this so-called card pack will also buy more books. After thinking it through, Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't help but nod his head, thinking that this was not a method that the old-fashioned Biwako could come up with. It should be the idea of Xia Yan. Sure enough, young people are not only well-developed, but also very smart. After seeing this advertisement, even Sarutobi Hiruzen became interested in the Keenan Tavern. So he took out the crystal ball and put it on the table, and then positioned the view in the tavern, intending to see what was going on inside. Who knew that what emerged from the crystal ball was pitch black again? Sarutobi Hiruzen. ... Why do I feel that this scene is a bit familiar? P.S. The following text is free of charge. Recently, it seems that no matter how I write, there are book friends who say that it is water. The first time I put it on the shelves, I always think about being worthy of everyone's subscriptions, and I feel even more constrained. I don't know what to write so that it won't be water. After all, I have written many times before. Teaching, inventing, opening a store, and practicing are the main themes of this book. I don't know if you have read the book about the Takeshi. Actually, I want to write this book in a light-hearted style, and a little more serious, so I added a teaching and cultivation storyline. If you have any suggestions, you can leave a message here, or tell me which previous plot you like. To be honest, I don't know what you like to read. If you think it's good to continue it the previous style, you can give a 1 or a thumbs up here. As for the update issue, I can only say that I have spent all my available time on writing, and I haven't even opened Steam for several months. Before, when I said that I was a novice, some book friends didn't believe me. Now I have finally proved myself with my hand speed. Great sorrow. Chapter 95 Obito's Growth. Monday morning, in the sealing art office of the ninja school. Xia Yan was sitting in his seat, happily enjoying the blueberry pancake breakfast prepared by Fuinjutsu. During this period, Fuinjutsu used his shadow clone to pick him up and drop him off at get-off work every day, not giving any chance to the Uchiha clan members who wanted to make trouble for him. So the conflict was temporarily eased and did not continue to expand. And the law enforcement recorder was also made, and it would be completed after some customized small tools arrived. You have to know that at this time, there are still many members of the Uchiha clan who hope to live in peace with the village, but they just can't find a way. As long as the law enforcement recorder can have half the effect that Xia Yan said, thus easing the conflict between the Uchiha and the village, then he doesn't need to say anything. These people will naturally hold down those restless guys and prevent them from continuing to attack him. Then Xia Yan thought again that he seemed to have agreed to add some special functions to Fuinjutsu's belt, and now it seems that he has to start thinking about it. Feeling a bit troublesome, Xia Yan thought about dyeing that belt red and adding a corner, and then telling Fuinjutsu that this is the model for the captain. Xia Yan, come and see. It's Obito's turn to play. Just when Xia Yan was thinking about whether to give Fuinjutsu the function of the Goblin Rocket Belt to achieve the triple speed effect, he heard Kushina standing in front of the window calling him. What's so good about first-year students pecking at each other? Although Xia Yan said this, he still walked to the window with breakfast. I saw that on the training ground not far away. Obito's first-year class A was taking a physical training class. And now it was Obito's turn to play against others. Opposite him stood a boy with long black straight hair and white pupils, who looked androgynous. After all, the guys of the Hyuga clan actually looked the same. This made Xia Yan couldn't help but conduct a serious academic analysis in his mind. Could it be that the Hyuga clan's ancestral low breast volume is the result of natural selection to highlight sexual characteristics? Because flat-chested Hyuga girls are no different from men, it is difficult for them to find mates and they have become extinct. I must study it myself when I have the chance. Then Xia Yan heard Kushina say, Obito's opponent is the Hyuga Honoki Tsuchi again. It seems that he has made great progress recently. Xia Yan knew that the usual sparring in the physical training class would mostly pair students with similar strengths. Otherwise, it would be difficult to play the role of training if the strength was so different. So according to Kushina, that Hyuga Honoki Tsuchi should be quite powerful, and Obito's ability to practice with him also proved that his recent progress was recognized by the teacher. Sure enough, Kushina explained again. The child did not take the sealing technique class, so Xia Yan may not know. He has truly mastered the use of the soft fist at a young age, and his strength is also rare among the first-year students. Xia Yan raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this. The so-called soft fist is a special physical technique that injects one's own chakra into the opponent's body, thereby damaging the opponent's meridian system and internal organs. Because it requires the Byakugan to exert its true power, it has always been a secret physical technique of the Hyuga clan. Unlike ordinary steel fists, soft fists require chakra to be released from the palm or fingertips, and the requirements for chakra control are not low. Therefore, in fact, many low-grade Hyuga clan students' soft fists are actually fancy, and it is difficult to achieve this. And it is really amazing that Hyuga Honokido mastered the use of soft fists at the age of only 5. Kushina tapped her chin again and said, come to think of it, Obito seems to have lost to him several times. Xia Yan swallowed a pancake and said, oh, Obito has been talking about breaking this kid's soft fist recently. Then it seems that there is no suspense in this battle. Kushina also echoed, that's right, after all, he is a genius of the Hyuga clan. Although Obito has made great progress recently, he should not be able to surpass him so quickly. Xia Yan hesitated slightly, and finally did not tell Kushina that there was no suspense because Obito had already learned that move yesterday, and he was basically sure to win. After all, spoilers are fun for a while, but the whole family will be in the crematorium. Come on, Obito. At the edge of the training ground, Obito's cheering group Nohara-rin and my guy were cheering him on. Thank you for your support. Obito subconsciously stretched his arm forward and raised his thumb to express his gratitude. In response, Lin and Kai also gave him a thumbs up reflexively. The three thumbs echoed each other, making the other students seem to see three might guys in a trance. Could it be that Lin and Obito have been infected by Kai's youth virus because they have been with Kai so often recently? The other students suddenly felt a chill in their hearts and hurriedly stepped away from them. As soon as she finished this action, Lin also covered her face with shame. Oh, I have been copying Kai's actions frequently recently, and as a result, I have copied even his habitual actions. It's so embarrassing. I feel that my body is gradually turning into Kai's shape. I don't know if Kakashi has seen it. There was a little gap between Lin's fingers, and she saw Kakashi not far away, with his hands crossed in front of his chest, leaning against a tree with his eyes closed, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Who will win this time? At this time, the surrounding students were also discussing as the atmosphere group. Of course it's Honoki Tsuchi, he's a genius of the Hyuga clan. But Obito has also made rapid progress recently. After all, he has Uchiha blood in him, right? No, I heard it was the work of Mr. Xia Yan. After all, Obito and Kai seem to be in that research group. They've been doing some activities on the rooftop after school recently. From what you said, Lin's Taijutsu performance has improved a lot recently. Are they practicing Taijutsu there every day? But isn't that the research group for sealing techniques? Is there something wrong with a sealing technique teacher teaching students Taijutsu? But seeing the progress of Obito and Lin, everyone was a little envious. Especially those students who had the opportunity to join the sealing technique research group before. They felt a little sour, feeling that Obito had taken away their opportunities. The Taijutsu teacher on the side was also a little uncomfortable when he heard everyone's discussion. Although he was very happy that Obito's Taijutsu had improved, why was it taught by the guy Xia Yan? Is this a retaliation against him? So petty. Hearing that some students were discussing that since teacher Xia Yan was so free, they might as well let him take care of the physical training class. The physical training teacher coughed a few times and asked the two people on the field to make opposing seals. Then he raised his hand and quickly dropped it, shouting, "Begin." Power Prelude. As soon as the teacher finished speaking, Obito sprinted forward, and then jumped up and kicked with a bold flying kick. This Power Prelude is the starting move that Akai likes to use the most. It can be used as a sneak attack or as a self-sacrificing attack. It is a bold physical technique that overwhelms the enemy with youthful momentum. Moreover, Xia Yan also saw a little bit of the prototype of Akai's ultimate secret in the future, Night Kai, from this move. It starts with a passionate flying kick and ends with a passionate flying kick. So this can be said to be a move that symbolizes Akai's indomitable philosophy of life. And because of Xia Yan's training suit, this move with a very Akate style also shines on Obito. Then, miss. Obito's flying kick was easily dodged by Hinata Honoki Tsuchi by leaning sideways. Then he struck out with his right palm, hoping to teach Obito a lesson for his recklessness. Although this power prelude seemed reckless, it actually controlled the jumping height exquisitely, and the time point at hitting the opponent was during the falling process, so the speed of the move was actually very fast. Therefore, Obito was able to land on the ground and press down, and kicked out with a swift sweeping leg. While dodging Honoki Tsuchi's attack, he continued his offensive. Konoha Whirlwind. Thank you all for your comments and support yesterday. I will learn how to control the rhythm of the story while maintaining the original style, and try to keep the story moving forward. Of course, I will also practice speeding up the typing speed. Chapter 96 Dark Gymnastics Konoha Whirlwind. So fast. Honoki Tsuchi's pupil shrank instantly after his palm strike missed, although no one could see it. This Konoha Whirlwind is a move that uses the body to rotate and perform 2 consecutive upper and lower kicks. The purpose is to use the first kick to compress the opponent's dodge space to increase the hit rate of the second kick. Honoki Tsuchi has fought with Obito several times recently, so he is naturally familiar with this move. He knew that if he jumped up to dodge Obito's sweeping kick, he would be kicked by his next upper kick. There was no other way, so he had to gather chakra at the bottom of his feet, exerted force suddenly, and his body suddenly exploded backwards, leaving Obito's attack range in an instant. Sure enough, Obito's speed has become faster again. Recalling Obito's previous actions, Honoki Tsuchi's face was stern, and he knew that he had to use all his strength. So, Byakugan. With the help of hand seals, the veins around Honoki Tsuchi's eyes bulged, and he activated the Hyuga clan's bloodliner limit, Byakugan. The next moment, under the perspective of the Byakugan, Obito no longer had any secrets in Honoki Tsuchi's eyes. This also reminded him why he was reluctant to open his Byakugan in front of Obito. Because he discovered through perspective that Obito was actually thicker than him. Well, it's about the meridians. Since the principle of the Hyuga clan soft fist is to release chakra as a means of attack, the amount of chakra that can be burst out instantly directly determines the power of the soft fist. Therefore, every member of the Hyuga clan, after learning to refine chakra at the age of 4 or 5, will practice secret training to widen the meridians under the guidance of their elders. Therefore, in terms of the thickness of meridians, the Hyuga clan has always been not inferior to others. However, this law obviously failed on Obito. In recent times, Honoki Tsuchi witnessed that Obito's meridians were rapidly expanding at a speed visible to the Byakugan. The efficiency is even slightly better than the secret meridian training method of the Hyuga clan. In addition, Obito was born with a good talent for meridians, so he soon surpassed him. If it were just this, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, the Uchiha clan, where Obito was, also had a similar meridian training method. It's just that because the Sharingan can only indirectly understand the meridians by observing chakra, the efficiency is not as high as theirs. Just think that someone in Obito's clan is helping him practice, plus he is gifted. But Honoka soon discovered that not only Obito, but also the meridians of Kai and Rin, who often hang out with him, are getting thicker. Later, he followed their connection and used his Byakugan to observe Ashuma Sarutobi, Kurenayu and Ebisu, and also found this situation. Obviously, all this is related to the research team organized by the sealing technique teacher. It's a pity that the terrace seems to have been shielded by the sealing technique teacher, so he can't know how they did it. Although Honoka informed the clan immediately, it was a pity that he only got an order to keep it secret for the time being. Shaking his head slightly to throw away the distracting thoughts, Honoka leaned over and rushed towards Obito, and really took out his biggest reliance to stand at the top of the first grade, the soft fist method. Although Obito's is thicker than his, he will not lose in terms of skills. Obito also interrupted Konoha's whirlwind and stood up to meet him. So the two began to fight in close combat, with the fierce and domineering steel fists and the feminine and mysterious soft fists colliding with each other. Amid the cheers from the surrounding classmates from time to time, the two soon fought for more than a dozen rounds. In the ceiling office, although Kushina next to him was clenching her fists and shouting to cheer for Obito, Xia Yan just felt bored. There are really not many highlights in the physical skills competition of Obito and his level. It's about who has better physical fitness and who makes fewer mistakes. It is precisely because of this that Obito, who has excellent physical fitness and has modified the simple Konoha fluid technique to reduce mistakes, can compete with the genius of the Hyuga family who is at the top of the grade so quickly. However, Obito's Konoha fluid technique was copied after all, and he didn't add his own understanding, so it was inevitable that it was a big stiff. It was okay against other people, but facing the soft fist known for its exquisite moves, this weakness began to gradually magnify. The previous few times, Obito was probably defeated because of this. After all, although the two of them were fighting back and forth at this time, due to the nature of the soft fist, if Obito showed a flaw and was hit by Honoki Tsuchi's soft fist, he might be defeated due to severe injuries. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Obito to fall behind. With the blessing of the insight of the Byakugan, Honoki Tsuchi's moves were aimed at the vital points, step by step, and it seemed that he was suppressing Obito. It seems that Obito is going to lose again. I was a little optimistic about him just now. There is no way, after all, the opponent is a genius of the Hyuga family. Seeing this scene, the students outside the field began to discuss in a low voice. And the situation seemed to develop according to the script in everyone's mind. Soon Honoki Tsuchi saw the opportunity for Obito to use a punch, and pushed it away with his left hand, and raised his right hand to hit Obito's abdomen. And Obito seemed to know that he had no time to dodge, gritted his teeth and punched Honoki Tsuchi's chest with his other hand, as if he was going to exchange injuries for injuries. Seeing this, Honka smiled secretly, knowing that as long as he hit with this palm, the flow of chakra in Obito's body would be disturbed. Then his punch would naturally become weak and powerless, unable to cause harm to him. However, just before his palm was about to focus on Obito, Honka suddenly found that the chakra in Obito's body began to flow violently in his Byakugan vision. Oops. Honka secretly said that it was not good. Although he hit Obito's abdomen with a palm, there was no joy on his face. Because he found that the chakra he had injected into Obito's body was not worth mentioning in front of the chakra torrent that was running wildly in the opponent's body. Soon it was quickly consumed like a drop in the ocean. Honka remembered that the elders had also told him that this situation might occur when dealing with opponents with large amounts of chakra. After all, the chakra injected into the opponent's body by ordinary soft fists is like a lone army deep in the enemy's territory. It is okay to beat the weak at ordinary times, but if you encounter an equally elite army, you will only be defeated by the opponent's continuous reinforcements. That's why the soft fist developed a more advanced technique, acupuncture. By turning the palm into a finger, breaking the surface with a point, and injecting the condensed chakra into the opponent's acupuncture points, it is like seizing the elite of a strong city. Even if there are not many people, they can rely on the terrain to block the enemy's march and gradually erode its territory. Obviously, although he is called a genius, the technique of acupuncture is not something that the 5-year-old Hyuga Honoki Tsuchi can master. So facing Obito's state, he actually felt helpless. Bang! Honoki Tsuchi's palm didn't work, but Obito's fist hit his chest without reservation, making a muffled sound. Honoki Tsuchi only felt a sharp pain in his chest, and staggered back involuntarily with a woo sound while holding his chest. And while he was in the time of being stiff, Obito didn't wait. He only saw his steps not staggering, his hands raised horizontally, and his body slowly pressed down. This action seemed a bit inexplicable to others, but it made Honoki Tsuchi feel terrified. Because from his Byakugan perspective, he could see that the chakra in Obito's body was gathering on his feet. The next moment, Obito shot out like a loose spring, flipped forward in the air, and kicked Honka's with his right foot. The chakra condensed in his right foot at this time was visible to the naked eye, even to the students standing by. Honka's, who was unable to dodge, was about to be hit by the fierce kick. At this time, an agile figure appeared beside him, holding him and dodging to the sidelines again. Everyone looked closely, and yes, it was the still nameless Taijutsu teacher. Boom. Then Obito kicked the ground with a flying kick, blasting a small pit on the ground, spiderweb spreading, and dust flying. The students watching immediately gasped, and they couldn't imagine how long Honka's would have to lie in the hospital after being kicked by this move. The winner is Uchiha Obito. the taijutsu teacher announced at the right time. Honoki Tsuchi in his arms was also sweating profusely, feeling as if he had saved his life. He swallowed and said to Obito, "What kind of move is this?" At this time, Obito slowly stood up in the smoke and dust, looked at Honoki Tsuchi with a deep face and said, "Dark Gymnastics first move Young Eagle takes off." Chapter 97. Black Hawk Down and Projection Teaching, 2-in-1. Great, Xia Yan. Obito 1. In the sealing art office, Kushina jumped up happily. She was about to high-five Xia Yan to celebrate, only to find that Xia Yan had returned to his seat without knowing when. "Didn't I just say that there was no suspense at all?" Xia Yan answered casually while throwing the finished breakfast package into the trash can. On the training ground, everyone gradually recovered from the shock just now. Countless exclamations sounded immediately, and everyone stared at Obito in unison, their faces full of disbelief. 1. Obito actually beat home Kazuya. Although everyone has seen Obito's progress recently. But until they saw Obito defeat the genius of the Hyuga family, they really felt a fact. Obito now is no longer the last one in the past. Obito has really become stronger. We agreed to be the last one together, damn it, I won't lose to him. That's right, I will work hard too. Everyone was stimulated by Obito's growth, and raised their fists, cheering themselves up like chicken blood. Oh, that's great. Obito's hard work has finally been recognized by everyone. Seeing this scene, Akuji was already in tears. And everyone was inspired by Obito's youthful fighting spirit. He is worthy at being the second man I have chosen. Yeah. Lin beside him also looked at Obito with a gratified look as if my son has grown up, and at the same time took out a handkerchief and handed it to Kai. "Ah, thank you." Kai took the handkerchief, blew his nose heavily a few times, and then returned it to Lin. Lin. ... Well, Kai, you can keep this handkerchief for yourself. Lin forced a smile, but she wanted to cry but had no tears. Oh, she obviously liked this handkerchief, and Kakashi, who was standing under the tree in the distance, also opened his eyes at this time. He looked up and down at Obito who was still standing on the field with a look as if he saw Obito for the first time. He looked deep, and his usual silliness was completely gone. It seems that Obito must have experienced hard training recently, which made him completely reborn and not so impetuous. The Sealing Technique Research Group. A slight murmur came from under Kakashi's mask. Although he didn't deliberately understand, Kakashi knew from the conversations of his classmates that joining that research group was the most direct reason why Obito became stronger. Not to mention that stupid Obito, who kept talking about Teacher Xia Yan every day, it was hard for him not to know. Teacher, I didn't think so before, but since the man died, Kakashi gradually realized how important the teacher's guidance was to training. After all, the Hatake clan is just a weak ninja clan, and now there is no one in the clan who can guide him. So Kakashi can only rely on the training notes left by the man to teach himself. The progress of training is naturally not as good as before. Therefore, when he saw that Obito's strength improved by leaps and bounds because of the guidance of the teacher, he felt very uncomfortable. This made him think that maybe he was not as talented as everyone imagined, but he just had a good teacher before. Dad, for a moment, the memory of his father rubbing his head and praising him after the training suddenly attacked Kakashi, making his eyes a little sore. But he quickly suppressed this emotion in his heart, and his eyes became cold again. Then Kakashi thought again, it seems that the sealing technique course is not as useless as he thought before. After all, Obito got the opportunity to become stronger from that research group. And not only Obito, he also keenly discovered that the strength of Akai and Ring, who were also in that group, has also improved a lot. Especially Akai, sometimes he even makes him feel a little threatened. This made him think that if he had taken some time to take the sealing technique course, he should be a member of that research group now. At this time, other classmates also had similar ideas as Kakashi. Oh, I'm so envious. When I first heard that Obito was joining the research team as an experiment, I laughed at him. I didn't expect that the clown would be me. Yes, dark gymnastics, I knew it was amazing when I heard it. I didn't expect that teacher Xia Yan would be willing to teach it to students. The students on the sidelines repeatedly pondered the four words dark gymnastics, feeling a sense of power. But why is it called gymnastics? It seems that there are occasional music commands coming from the rooftop. Could it be that they're actually doing radio gymnastics up there? How is this possible? Everyone shook their heads when they heard this guess. How could it be possible that doing radio gymnastics that is suitable for all ages can make you stronger? Dark gymnastics must be something more restricted.
Thinking of teacher Xia Yan often guiding students to learn art gymnastics after school, everyone was moved again. Projection stories, keying cards, and future projection techniques teaching. Now with the addition of this art gymnastics, teacher Xia Yan always spares no effort to help students become stronger. Now he even does the work of a physical training teacher. What kind of spirit is this? This also made everyone look at the physical training teacher with disgust. Alas, we are all teachers, why is there such a big gap? The physical training teacher was speechless when everyone looked at him. Especially when he found that Honoki Trasuchi, who was rescued by him, also had a disgusted expression on his face. He felt more and more that all this was a conspiracy of Xia Yan. Is it necessary to be so aggressive? If you do his job, will Xia Yan get 2 salaries or something? The physical training teacher felt helpless and coughed a few times. He said to Obito, who was still standing on the field, pretending to be powerful, "Okay, Obito, since the fight is over, get off the field quickly, don't delay that time of other students sparring. If you don't come down, I will be persuaded to leave again." But Obito heard this, but replied with a deep face, "Okay, teacher, but before that, I have a small problem." "What?" "That is, I can't seem to feel my own right foot." As he said, Obito finally couldn't hold it anymore, and asked for help from the physical training teacher with tears in his eyes. "Teacher, I can't walk anymore, everyone. ... Oh my god, why didn't you say that just now?" The physical training teacher's face changed drastically, and he ran over quickly. "Because everyone was praising me just now." Obito, whose right foot was being checked by the teacher with his trouser leg lifted up, said a little embarrassedly. The students on the sidelines looked at each other in silence. In the end, everyone's faces showed helpless smiles again. It seems that no matter how strong he becomes, Obito is still Obito. And Honoki Trasuchi, who had just been defeated, looked at Obito with incredible eyes. I was actually defeated by such a guy. After school that day, on the rooftop of the teaching building, the members of the research team changed into training clothes as usual and were preparing to carry out today's activities. However, unlike usual, Obito next to Xia Yan did not change into training clothes, but sat in a wheelchair, with a thick bandage wrapped around his right foot, and his face looked like he had lost his parents. Multiple meridian injuries in the body, torn leg muscles, slight bone fractures. It will take at least 3 weeks to heal. After closing Obito's diagnosis report, Xia Yan said to everyone with a smile, "Thank you Obito for demonstrating to us in person what the consequences will be if forbidden techniques are used indiscriminately. You really deserve to be the #1 experimenter in our research group." Why don't you applaud and thank him? The students were speechless when they heard this, but under the gaze of teacher Xia Yan, they still applauded sparsely. The applause was like a slap on Obito's face, making him blush with shame and cry, "Teacher, I'm sorry, I know I was wrong, please let me go." Xia Yan shook his head and said, "If saying sorry is useful, then what is the point of your police force? You are lucky this time, nothing serious. Otherwise, let alone it take off, it would be Black Hawk down directly. Obviously, I only let you copy Kai's it take off so that you can learn how to quickly circulate chakra in your body to break the soft fist, and I repeatedly told you not to use it indiscriminately. In the end, you not only used it, but also used all your strength. Are you sure you have no grudge against that Honoki Trasuchi?" Xia Yan was a little angry when he talked about this. This morning, he knew that Obito had learned how to break the basic soft fist, so he didn't watch the whole process. Therefore, when Obito was sent to the infirmary, he knew about this and was shocked. Obito felt ashamed and said weakly, "I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I was just in the spur of the moment." Xia Yan held his forehead when he heard this. Sure enough, even if he was just Obito, he still had the Uchiha clan's pretentious blood in his body. It's just that he didn't show it because he was the last one in the class before and had nothing to show off. Now he doesn't care about anything and retaliates by showing off as soon as he gets the chance. So don't look at this guy saying that he knows his mistake now, but he will definitely dare to do it next time. Therefore, Xia Yan had to say sternly, "This time it's because I didn't give you enough instructions, so let it go. But if there is a next time, I can only let you leave the research group to avoid involving other students." Seeing that the usually smiling teacher Xia Yan was more serious than ever, Obito knew that he was not joking, and he was a little scared in his heart, and began to reflect on his mistakes sincerely. After all, although the training in the research group was hard, it was the happiest time in his life for him. If he was expelled because of a momentary show-off behavior, he would never forgive himself in his life. Therefore, Obito lowered his head and said with a slightly crying voice, "Teacher Xia Yan, I'm really sorry, I won't do it again." Xia Yan saw that there were a few traces of tears on Obito's pants, knowing that Obito probably really knew his mistake this time, so his tone became much softer. "Then you can't do things like this in the future. You know that there are still many people around you who care about you." "Teacher," Obito raised his head and saw the gentle face of Teacher Xia Yan in his blurred vision. Then he turned his head and saw Lin, Teacher Kushina, Akai, Ashuma, Hong and Ebisu who were smiling at him. In an instant, the memories of getting along with everyone emerged in his mind like a revolving lantern. An indescribable warmth surged from his heart, and then began to flow upwards towards his brain. Just when this warmth was about to reach his eyes, he heard Teacher Xia Yan say, "By the way, in order to deepen your impression, Obito, you still have to write a self-review letter to me after you go back. As for the number of words, I think it should be 10,000 words. 10,000 word self-review letter." Obito's body trembled when he heard this, and he felt that the warmth was shrinking again, but he didn't care, and burst into tears. Because this time, he really knew he was wrong. After a long time, Obito, who was broken by the 10,000 word self-review letter, stopped crying under everyone's comfort, and then hid behind everyone, feeling embarrassed to see people. But what he didn't know was that this scene had been completely recorded by his most respected teacher Xia Yan, using the recorder function as one of the important weapons to prevent him from turning evil in the future. Then Xia Yan coughed a few times to attract everyone's attention back. That's all about Obito. Just remember to take it as a warning. After all, there are many dangers in the study of sealing techniques. If you have a half-baked mentality like him, you will lose your life. The students nodded seriously to show that they understood. Then Xia Yan smiled again, easing the somewhat oppressive atmosphere. Then he said, "Let's get back to the topic. Although Obito gave us a wrong demonstration. But it is undeniable that he was able to defeat the genius of the Hyuga family, and it also proved that our nearly 1 month of radio gymnastics training was not in vain. I believe everyone should have experienced its effect." After hearing this, the students also chatted about their recent progress. Akai said that he had better control over his body. Lin thanked Akai for giving her a copy of Konoha's fluid technique, and coupled with the results of radio gymnastics, her physical skills have surpassed many boys. Hong said that the illusions she mastered are more fluent. Although Ashuma felt that the changes were not big, he said that he was very energetic even though he only slept a few hours a day recently. Ebisu also said that he didn't have nosebleeds so easily and could read more learning materials. After all, everyone's combat effectiveness is increased by at least 30%, and the level of ki training has also increased by at least 1 level. With abundant chakra, no matter what we do, we will naturally get twice the result with half the effort. Xia Yan concluded with a smile, and then changed the subject. But everyone should also notice that the effect of the radio gymnastics training in recent days has been greatly weakened, and everyone is doing it very easily, without the painful feeling as before. Everyone nodded, not knowing whether they should miss the painful and happy time. Xia Yan explained. This actually means that the bonus period of everyone's widening meridians through radio gymnastics training has passed, and the next step is slow work, and the progress will not be so obvious. So we should also carry out the next stage of activities of the research group. Everyone was a little disappointed when they heard that they would not improve as fast as before, but they immediately cheered up when they heard about the new activities. "Teacher, should we start practicing the static exercise?" Ashuma raised his hand with anticipation. Xia Yan shook his head slightly and said, "You kids' meridians are still very fragile. It's too early to learn static exercises now. Take Obito and Kai for example. Although Obito's meridians are thicker than Kai's, his meridians will be damaged when he uses the eaglet to take off, but Kai won't. This is the difference in the strength of the meridians. So you have to wait until you have trained your meridians to at least close to Kai's level through radio gymnastics before you can start practicing static exercises." "Oh." Everyone responded with some regret. Of course, Xia Yan had a more important reason that he didn't tell them. That is, this static exercise is still in the early stages of development, not much better than just creating a new folder. I'm working on it. Seeing everyone's disappointed faces, Xia Yan spread his hands and said, "After all, we are not a physical exercise research group. We can't ask you to do radio gymnastics every day." Everyone then remembered that they were a sealing technique research group. So Ebisu said with anticipation, "So we are finally going to study sealing." Xia Yan smiled and said, "Yes, it is ninjutsu.
Everyone almost sprained their waist when they heard this because of the drainage ditch bend of Xia Yan teacher. Although the sealing technique is actually classified as ninjutsu, it is obvious that the teacher does not mean this. However, Home quickly reacted and said excitedly, "Teacher, are you going to teach us projection technique?" She was very envious of this projection technique at the beginning and planned to use it with her own illusion technique. Xia Yan nodded and said, "Yes, everyone still remembers what I said in the first class, because even the simplest sealing technique has a long learning cycle, so I will teach you to construct projection technique through rooms as a transition." After all, the room formula used in learning projection technique can also be used in other sealing techniques, so that we can learn the real sealing technique more efficiently in the future. Everyone heard this and remembered that it seemed to be such a thing. Thinking of the various cool operations that teacher Xia Yan performed with projection technique, everyone's heart was hot and couldn't wait to master this technique. Then Xia Yan said, "Actually, I said that I would teach this technique to all students in the sealing technique class this semester, but it is clear that I seem to have slightly overestimated everyone's level. Whether it is the level of the sealing technique or the level of the three-body technique. So due to limited time, the teaching of the projection technique in the sealing technique class may have to be left until next school year, and you need to learn it in advance, so that I can judge the level of mastery of this technique in the future based on your learning progress." "Teacher, is there a difference in the level of mastery of the projection technique?" Ashuma asked in confusion. He thought that after learning it, he could snap his fingers like the teacher and get whatever he wanted. Xia Yan smiled and said, "Ninjutsu naturally has a difference in the level of mastery. For example, the clone technique, your current graduation standard is to be able to create an identical clone to pass, right?" As he spoke, a clone that looked exactly like him suddenly appeared next to Xia Yan. Everyone nodded to indicate that this was indeed the case. Xia Yan added, "But most students can actually create multiple clones very easily." Just like before, several clones appeared beside him. Because Obito, who had a large amount of chakra and was difficult to control, and Akai, who had an average talent for ninjutsu, looked at each other tacitly, and a sense of sympathy emerged between the poor students. Going a step further, Xia Yan added, "In fact, the clones created by the clone technique can perform some simple movements. The trick is to use the principle of visual retention. When using the clone technique, a series of clone action images are attached to the clone, and played frame by frame like a movie, thus creating the illusion that the clone is in action." While Xia Yan was talking, the clones around him also began to move. It's just that in everyone's eyes, their movements seemed to be stuck and not very smooth. However, as Xia Yan inserted more and more action frames, the clones' movements became more and more smooth, and finally there was no difference from ordinary people. As long as you switch 30 clone movements per second, most people won't be able to tell the real thing from the fake. Everyone couldn't help but be amazed when they heard this. 30 clone movements per second, teacher, you say it so easily. Xia Yan naturally knew what everyone was thinking, and smiled, "It's not as difficult as everyone thinks. After all, we are not asking you to use the clone technique 30 times per second. We are just adding a few more actions when constructing the clone action. Since generally speaking, the clone only needs to perform some simple actions like running, as long as we solve the first 1 or 2 seconds, we just need to repeat it continuously afterwards. Not to mention the running action of our ninjas with both hands swinging back, which also makes our work easier. In fact, when I was in school, many people actually knew this technique. After all, compared with the clone standing still, the clone that can run is obviously much more confusing. On the battlefield, whether or not you master this technique may be the difference between life and death." Everyone was stunned. It turns out that many teachers said that they were the worst class they had ever taught, and they were not lying. They went to school in peacetime, and they had no idea how hard their predecessors who went to school in wartime fought to save their lives. Xia Yan added, "That's why I just said that I overestimated everyone's level of the three-body technique, which caused the teaching progress to lag behind. After all, the technique of this clone technique is one of the basic principles of the projection technique." Chapter 98. Destiny Projection, 2-in-1. When everyone heard that this complicated clone technique was just one of the basic principles of projection, they were a little speechless. The teacher was right just now, he really overestimated everyone. Even Lin, who had always been good at ninjutsu, was embarrassed at this time and asked hesitantly, "Teacher Xia Yan, I remember you seemed to say that in addition to the clone technique, the projection technique also seems to use the transformation technique." Xia Yan waved his hand to make all the clones disappear, then smiled and nodded. "Yes, the principle is actually very simple. In the process of constructing multiple clones as I just mentioned, the technique of transformation is used to further modify the appearance of the clones. As everyone knows, the hand seals required for performing the clone technique are Wei, Si, and Yin, while the hand seals for the transformation technique are a single Wei seal. The Wei seal is a hand seal that is often used to assist in changing the nature of chakra and shaping the appearance, so the functions of the Wei seal used in the clone technique and the transformation technique are actually the same in essence. It's just that the clone technique gives the chakra its own image information and then releases it out of the body to form, while the transformation technique gives the chakra the image information of various things and then circulates it in the body. Therefore, you can also simply think of the projection technique as performing an incomplete transformation technique first, giving the chakra object information, and then releasing it out of the body through the clone technique to form. So the hand seals of the hand seal version of the projection technique are the same as those of the clone technique, which are Wei, Si, and Yin. How about it? The number of hand seals has not even increased. Isn't it very simple? That's weird. The students all had bitter faces at the same time. Although the number of hand seals did not increase, isn't this actually just inserting a transformation jutsu into the clone jutsu? How can this be called simple? As poor students, Obito and Kai huddled together, trembling. The ordinary three-body jutsu is already a headache for them, not to mention the projection jutsu that combined the transformation jutsu and the clone jutsu. However, as Kai was shaking, he remembered a very important thing. That is, he didn't seem to have taken the sealing technique class, so he didn't need to learn it at all. So after a trembling, Kai suddenly felt bored. And the teaching assistant Kushina at the side also smiled bigly. Recently, she would practice with Xia Yan in the grove near the school from time to time, and she had long been envious of his projection jutsu. She thought that Xia Yan was going to teach this jutsu to his students, so it shouldn't be too difficult. She didn't expect it to be so much more complicated than she imagined. Seeing that everyone was worried, Xia Yan smiled and said, "You may not have come to your senses yet, and you are still looking at projection techniques with the same mindset as ordinary ninjutsu. You should know that complexity is never a big problem for sealing techniques or room ninjutsu. After all, we can simplify many of the steps of the technique by drawing the corresponding room formulas on the talisman paper in advance. So even if the hand seal version of projection techniques is a ninjutsu with a learning difficulty of at least C level, I am confident that most students can master the room version of projection techniques before graduation." Everyone nodded slowly and thoughtfully, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Indeed, although it is not easy to make projection techniques by drawing room formulas, it is much simpler than directly hand sealing and performing projection techniques on the spot. Then Xia Yan said, "And the projection technique that I intend to let most students master is not as fancy and large scale as the one I usually use. But even the most basic projection technique can produce great results as long as it is used properly. For example, Xia Yan snapped his fingers and everyone saw a scene of two ninjas fighting each other in a dense forest slowly emerging behind him. It appeared, Xia Yan's short story teaching method. Except for Akai, who was a little confused, Kushina and other students began to get excited. One of the reasons why everyone likes the sealing technique class is that Xia Yan teacher will not only play stories for everyone before get out of class, but also use projection to play various short stories during class, so as to deepen everyone's memory of some knowledge. The show effect is full. So everyone knows that it is time to watch the story as soon as they see the scene around them change. However, unlike the usual various strange fictional stories, this time they soon found a familiar figure. Isn't that a young ninja with white curly hair quickly attracted their attention. After all, that boy often appears in the Genin card game, so everyone is familiar with him. Yes, that was their teacher Xia Yan's appearance when he was a genin. At this time, he was fighting with an enemy who was several heads taller than him, but after a few moves, he began to retreat again and again. Fortunately, he found an opportunity to throw a shuriken to force the opponent to retreat a few steps, and took the opportunity to hide behind a big tree, panting and looking embarrassed. After holding down Akai, who wanted to come forward to help, everyone continued to watch. Then the young version of Xia Yan teacher squatted behind that big tree, turning his head vigilantly to stare at the enemy not far behind that tree, while taking out a talisman and clamping it between his fingers, and then began to form a complicated hand seal. His opponent, an adult ninja wearing an Iwagaku forehead protector, approached him step by step with a grin. The real scene that was different from the past made everyone gradually forget that it was just a projection, and began to sweat for the little Xia Yan. Fortunately, the little Xia Yan's technique was finally completed before the opponent arrived. With a slight bang, a figure who looked exactly like Xia Yan rushed out from behind that tree and ran in one direction at a very fast speed. His steps seemed to be a little messy because of panic, and his face, which turned his head from time to time, also showed an expression of fear. If everyone had not seen with their own eyes that it was just a clone created by Xia Yan, they would have almost thought it was a real person. And the Iwagaku ninja obviously did not notice the problem, so he chased after him slowly with a cat-and-mouse mentality. The real Xia Yan was lying on the ground motionless, and waited until the other party left his sight, then he quickly got up and ran in the opposite direction. It was not until the projection slowly disappeared that everyone's tense nerves relaxed and let out a long breath. Although it was just a simple confrontation, the tension of life and death still made everyone a little breathless. Even Kushina, who had been staying in the village for many years and had hardly encountered any danger, was patting her poor chest to comfort her heart, which was beating a little too fast. Seeing this, Xia Yan also sighed. It was indeed very dangerous that time. If the other party had not been serious, I'm afraid you would hardly see me, Teacher Xia Yan now. What, that actually happened? Home was surprised. The others also opened their eyes in surprise. I didn't expect that Teacher Xia Yan, who seemed to be omnipotent, would have such an embarrassing experience in the past. This made everyone realize again that Teacher Xia Yan was born in a civilian ninja family. Thinking that he had developed the projection technique under such conditions, and would later create the path of rune ninjutsu, everyone couldn't help but look at Xia Yan with admiration. Especially Lin, Kai and Ebisu, students from ordinary families, were greatly encouraged and determined to become ninjas like Teacher Xia Yan. Xia Yan felt a little embarrassed by being stared at by everyone, and waved his hands and said, "Okay, stop looking at me like that, that's not the purpose of my projection just now. I just showed you my own experience because I think real examples are more convincing." Everyone came back to their senses after hearing this, and remembered that the teacher showed that projection in order to let them understand how to use simple projection techniques in actual combat. Then they heard Xia Yan explain, "What I used in the projection just now is the prototype of the projection technique, so the steps of the projection are a bit complicated. You just need to look at my idea of using the projection technique. Obviously, the projection technique I used is actually an enhanced version of the technique of letting the clone move mentioned earlier, allowing the clone to perform more complex facial expressions and movements, further improving the confusion and practicality. In terms of the confusing effect, it is already very close to the shadow clone technique, and even many tactics of the shadow clone technique can be used directly. However, the shadow clone technique is a B-level ninjutsu that is difficult for a genin to learn, and the requirement for the amount of chakra is not low, which is not something that an ordinary genin can master. It is precisely because of this that the Iwagaku ninja did not think of this possibility, giving me a chance to escape. Everyone nodded slowly after listening, feeling that this method is indeed very cost-effective. Then Xia Yan showed everyone several more uses of the projection technique, and all of them were battle scenes he had personally experienced. There was a scene where Xia Yan created a clone covered with detonating talismans, shouted out his explosion and rushed towards the opponent, and took the opportunity to escape. There was a scene where Xia Yan created a clone who committed suicide in order not to expose the information, and then jumped into the water to escape. There was a scene where Xia Yan created 7 clones and ran away in 8 directions, making it impossible for the enemy to distinguish them. There was a scene where Xia Yan created a clone that overlapped with his original body, and he escaped from underground using the earth escape technique he had just learned. Although with each scene, Xia Yan's projection technique became more and more proficient, the number of seals continued to decrease, and the rune formula on the talisman paper became more and more complicated. Later, even the sound effects that Teacher Xia Yan mentioned were developed, and the projections made became more and more realistic. But everyone's expressions gradually became weird. Why do I feel that the teacher has too much experience in escaping? Ashuma, who always speaks his mind, complained directly. Teacher, why are these all ways to escape? Xia Yan explained with a smile. You may not know that even in the most intense stage of the Second Ninja World War, most of the genin on the battlefield were only responsible for logistics work, and the danger was not high. But once they encounter danger, it is a desperate situation where you are 100% sure of your life. Because the most likely thing you are going to encounter is the ninja who sneaks in to cut off our logistics supply lines. For example, the ninja in the first projection scene just now is the one I encountered when I was maintaining the magic circle node behind that battlefield. Facing these opponents who were at least at the level of Chunin, being able to successfully escape and save your life is already the biggest victory. So how to use projection techniques to escape in various situations will be one of the focuses of future teaching. When everyone heard what teacher Xia Yan said, they felt that the life of a ninja seemed both boring and dangerous, not as good as they had imagined, and they felt disillusioned. Seeing everyone's faces fall and they looked listless, Xia Yan shook his head and smiled to improve everyone's interest in learning. But there are other practical uses of projection techniques. Xia Yan snapped his fingers again as everyone's eyes brightened up again. Then the projection of Xia Yan appeared again, but this time it seemed a little bigger than before. He crossed his hands in front of his chest, holding a large shuriken in each hand. Then he swung his arms violently, and the shuriken flew out. He quickly made a seal, and then countless shuriken projections appeared out of thin air, mixed with the real shuriken he had just thrown, and flew towards the 5 enemies in the distance. But this time, teacher Xia Yan had some bad taste, so that everyone was right between Xia Yan and the enemy. So those large shuriken flew towards them. Everyone, throw down! Akai shouted, and then pulled Obito to the ground. Obito was caught off guard and was pulled down, and his wound was pulled, and he screamed in pain. But at this time, no one else noticed it at all. Because although everyone has been accustomed to the grand scene created by teacher Xia Yan's projection technique, when they see countless shurikens flying towards them, they still feel a tingling sensation on their scalp. Because for a while, they couldn't find a good way to crack it. Sure enough, when they looked back along the shurikens that passed through their bodies, they saw that the ninjas were confused and only had time to protect their vital parts. Other parts were hit by many shurikens and looked embarrassed. But just when everyone was looking forward to seeing how teacher Xia Yan would show his power and defeat them, the projection began to disappear gradually. Ah! Ashuma said anxiously like a reader persecuted by a broken chapter dog, "Teacher, please don't, let us finish watching the end of this battle." Xia Yan was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he reacted and spread his hands helplessly and said, "But this is the end of this battle. You just turned your head to look at the enemy's side so you may not have noticed it. In fact, I had already taken this opportunity to run away. Otherwise, do you still think I can deal with so many ninjas alone?" Everyone was speechless for a while. I can only complain in my heart. Teacher Xia Yan really never forgets his original intention. At this time, everyone realized that Obito had fallen to the ground without knowing when, and Kai was lying on Obito, protecting him tightly, a picture of a man on top of another man. Everyone turned their heads away and couldn't bear to watch. Only Lin blushed slightly, feeling like she wanted to watch but was embarrassed. After Xia Yan recorded this scene, he said angrily, "What are you two doing? We're in class now." Obito, who was pressed under Kai, said with his dying breath, "Really? It's really none of my business." Kai slowly reacted and touched the back of his head a little embarrassedly. After everyone finally put the screaming Obito back into the wheelchair, teaching returned to normal. Xia Yan first looked at Ashuma and said, "Ashuma, don't you think the scene just now is a bit familiar?" Ashuma also thought of something when he heard it. "This is very similar to the Shuriken shadow clone technique that my father demonstrated to me." Xia Yan smiled and nodded. "Yes, this move was developed with reference to the technique of the Okage, so it is also called the Shuriken clone technique. It should be able to achieve good results when used against enemies who don't know the 5 elements escape technique and have no cover around them. By the way, the Shuriken shadow clone technique of the 3rd Okage was invented with reference to the shadow clone technique of the 2nd Okage, and the shadow clone technique of the 2nd Okage was invented with reference to the wood clone technique of the 1st Okage. This is just a little popular science, you don't have to think about it." After hearing what the teacher said, everyone decided to think about it carefully. So everyone quickly took a breath of cold air. After all, the teacher's Shuriken shadow clone technique was also invented with reference to the Shuriken shadow clone technique of the 3rd Okage. According to this rule, doesn't it mean, my teacher has the talent to be a Okage? Xia Yan pretended not to see everyone's fiery gazes and continued to teach. Of course, in addition to the Shuriken clone technique, the projection technique can also be used in conjunction with detonating tags and various traps. For example, when you are being chased by the enemy while escaping, and you set up a trap but don't have time to eliminate the traces, you can use the projection technique to directly cover it with a layer of camouflage. As Xia Yan spoke, several little Xia Yans appeared beside him one after another, setting up various traps in different environments and using projection techniques to camouflage. Those camouflages that were difficult to distinguish between true and false made everyone's scalp tingle, and it felt that if you didn't have the ability to perceive, you couldn't detect it at all. Just watching the teacher use the projection technique to escape, and then use the projection technique to set traps and kill while escaping. Everyone always felt that teacher Xia Yan's fighting style seemed to be developing in a strange direction. After a while, Xia Yan finally explained the various uses of the basic projection technique and paused for everyone to digest it. Everyone reviewed the usage that teacher Xia Yan said, and gradually realized the rules. That is, it is not beyond the scope. In the demonstrations just now, there was basically nothing that could not be learned in the ninja school. Even the projection technique itself was a combination of the clone technique and the transformation technique. But these things taught in the ninja school were organically combined together in the hands of teacher Xia Yan through the projection technique, and each amplified the effects of each other. It feels that as long as you can master teacher Xia Yan's projection technique, even if you were an ordinary student without a family inheritance, you may not be able to compete with the children of the ninja clan. After all, compared to the rich means of attack, the life of a ninja is fragile. Even an ordinary kunai, as long as it is used properly, can easily take the life of a genin. Xia Yan began to make a closing statement. Because the error tolerance rate is extremely low, the importance of intelligence occupies an important position. That's why I often say that intelligence is the life of a ninja. As a ninjutsu that can weave false intelligence, projection contains countless possibilities. Even as the inventor, I dare not say that I can develop all the uses. Therefore, in the future projection teaching plan, in addition to the basic practical projection talismans, I also plan to let each student design and develop a projection method of their own, so as to continuously broaden the scope of use of projection. Naturally, all of you will be no exception. Xia Yan continued. I even have higher requirements for you. In addition to learning the rune version of projection like other students, you must also gradually master the seal-type projection by constantly drawing projection talismans. Especially the projection technique you designed yourself, it will continue to evolve as you grow in all aspects. Well, to distinguish, let's call this projection technique your natal projection technique. So the first extra homework today is to go home and think of a projection technique that suits your taste, write it down on paper, and hand it in during the next research group activity. Okay. Everyone agreed, and they were all eager to design their own projection technique. Xia Yan nodded and said, then, we will also start the specific teaching of projection technique now. But before that, there is one more thing to do. What is teacher Xia Yan? Everyone asked hurriedly after being excited by teacher Xia Yan's words. Xia Yan said slowly, of course, it's radio gymnastics. Everyone's waist was sprained again by teacher Xia Yan's drainage canal bend. It always felt like returning to the starting point. Xia Yan explained. After all, you only need to use the part above the neck when listening to the class, and it's a waste to leave the other parts idle. Anyway, there is a motion copying device. You don't need to control the movements at all, just leave your body to Akai. Not bad, leave it to me. Akai also gave a thumbs up after hearing this. He just made a mistake, and decided to perform well to make up for his mistake. But he soon thought that Obito, who was hurt the most by him, seemed unable to do exercises now, this. And everyone had no way to refute what teacher Xia Yan said, so they had to stand still and let Akai do whatever he wanted to their bodies. As the headphone version of the MP3 card was activated beside Akai's ears, the students began to dance with Akai's movements. Xia Yan snapped his fingers, and a large blackboard appeared behind him. It was densely written with various rune spells, which make people dizzy. Then we will start the first stage of learning projection techniques, disassembling the clone technique and transformation technique, and completely transforming the hand seal gestures into rune forms. Today we are going to talk about the first 3 of the 136 rune spells in the unprinted group. Everyone should listen carefully. The students who were doing exercises began to listen to teacher Xia Yan's endless chatter of various obscure words. They didn't understand them one by one, and they didn't understand them even more when they were connected. Thinking that this kind of course would be carried out for a long time in the future, the fear that everyone had previously been dominated by radio gymnastics seemed to be awakened again. But before, they were physically tired, but this time, they were mentally tired. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels.
Chapter 99a. Fool who graduated at the age of 5. 4,300 words, 300 words, 300 words, 300 words. I wrote all night and only wrote more than 1,000 words. Alas, I don't know when I can get 10,000 words. The next morning, in the corridor of the ninja school, Uchiha Obito was limping towards his class with a cane, with 2 big dark circles under his eyes. Obito, who had been tortured by the self-review letter for a night, looked a little haggard. Fortunately, many classmates cast admiring eyes at him along the way, which made him feel a little better. Sure enough, there are no secrets in the ninja school. Everyone knew that he defeated Honkatsuchi so quickly. Obito, who could only think in a single thread, quickly put the self-review letter behind his mind and began to enjoy everyone's attention. Alas, actually this is not a big deal. Everyone is making a fuss. Honkatsuchi is not as good as me. Although Obito pretended to think in his heart, his body was very honest. He held his head high, chest puffed out, like a victorious rooster, and even with crutches he could take steps without recognizing his relatives, and continued to walk forward. Here comes Obito. When Obito stepped into the door of Class A of the first year, someone suddenly shouted, and the whole classroom suddenly became noisy. Seeing many classmates gathered around him with bright eyes, Obito felt excited. After all, school was over after he received treatment in the infirmary yesterday, and he only had time to participate in the activities of the research group, and he didn't have the opportunity to hear his classmates praise him. Although he paid the price of injury, he defeated the guy Honkatsuchi anyway, and now everyone must look at me with new eyes. Obito couldn't help but think so in his heart, and he felt proud. Come on, praise me as much as you can. Don't pity me because I am a delicate flower. As he wished, everyone quickly surrounded Obito and praised his performance yesterday. Obito, you were so good yesterday. Maybe you really have a chance to defeat Kakashi. Yeah, you actually beat Honka. You must have gone through very hard special training. I didn't expect you to work so hard to defeat Kakashi. And the last move of dark gymnastics yesterday was so scary. Is this your trump card to deal with Kakashi? Obito was originally listening to everyone's praise for him happily, but as he listened, he began to feel something was wrong. Why is there so much Kakashi in these praises? More importantly, how did you know that I want to challenge Kakashi? Obito asked in surprise. We just heard it from Kai. A classmate answered. Is that so? Although Obito was a little resentful of Kai for exposing his secret plan, he felt that it was no big deal for everyone to know about it, as his strength had greatly increased. But the next moment, Obito's expression froze. Because he thought of another very important thing. That is, Kai seemed to have some misunderstandings about why he wanted to defeat Kakashi, and believed that he did special training because he didn't want Kakashi to leave school. Although Obito has explained countless times that he and Kakashi are just pure enemies, he always gives in to Kai's smiling face of you don't need to explain, I understand everything, and finally nothing comes of it. Since everyone got the news from Kai, it wouldn't be, then, did Kai mention the reason why I challenged Kakashi? Obito asked tentatively. Although no one answered yet, Obito has already got the answer to the question. Because he saw that the classmates around him showed the same smile as Kai. It's over. Obito felt cold in his heart. Then a classmate patted him on the shoulder and sighed. By the way, I didn't expect you to do this to keep Kakashi, Obito. Although you don't get along well with each other, you actually have a good relationship. The relationship between Kakashi and I is not good. Obito tried his best to deny it. Yes, you don't have a good relationship. Everyone nodded and smiled. No matter how Obito explained, everyone still had that smiling face of you don't need to explain, we all understand, which made him want to punch them in the face. Knowing that it would be difficult to change everyone's ideas in a short time, Obito decided to block the source of the rumor first. So after a while, Obito, who had finally gotten rid of everyone's encirclement, pulled Kai to the corner of the classroom and said with a dark face, Kai, why did you say that I was going to challenge Kakashi? What's more important is that you also mentioned so many private things. Huh. Kai was a little confused when he heard it, and tilted his head and said, So Obito, you didn't know yet? This is actually the task the teacher Xia Yan gave me last night. What? Teacher Xia Yan's task? Obito's eyes widened. Yes. Kai nodded, and then recalled, the teacher said that your actions yesterday disrupted his tactical plan for the battle between you and Kakashi.
The original tactical plan was to take advantage of Kakashi's carelessness and underestimate the enemy at the beginning, and kill him by surprise with a move he had never seen before, so as to make up for the gap in your strength and experience and lay that foundation for victory. But after what happened yesterday, Kakashi will definitely not underestimate you so easily. And he has also seen the young eagle take off, so he must be on guard against other physical moves. So the teacher had to change the tactical plan and let me tell everyone about this, which is also a part of the strategy. But the teacher didn't tell you the specific reason, Obito, you have to ask it yourself. After listening to Kai's explanation, Obito realized helplessly that it seemed to be his fault again. His right leg was fractured, his meridians were damaged, and he wrote a 10,000-word self-review. Now his reputation has been damaged, and it will also affect the plan to defeat Kakashi. Obito felt that he had paid too much for his pretentious behavior yesterday, although he succeeded in pretending to be pretentious. But is it all worth it? Now that he knew that this was arranged by teacher Xia Yan, and that the cause was due to his own pretentious behavior, Obito naturally could not blame Kai anymore. However, the misunderstanding Kai brought to everyone still had to be resolved. Thinking of this, Obito subconsciously looked at Kakashi's seat in the front row of the classroom, and found that it was still empty, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Kakashi hasn't come yet. As long as he clarifies it to the classmates in the class now, there shouldn't be any big problems. Having figured out everything in his mind, Obito began to walk towards the podium with his crutches. But after a few steps, his hand was held by a pair of warm little hands. Obito looked at the owner of those hands, and felt that his body suddenly became several pounds lighter. Ah, Lin is holding my hand. Nohara leaned close to Obito, looking at him with a look of satisfaction, and said, Obito, I just heard that your special training with Kai was for Kakashi. I was right, Obito, you actually care about Kakashi. But you were too polite. I'm also Kakashi's classmate, although I am not as good as Kai. If possible, I would like to contribute to your special training. Looking at Rin's clear and bright eyes, Obito found it difficult to say that he wanted to defeat Kakashi, just because he didn't like him, not to mention that Rin took the initiative to ask to join his special training group. Doesn't that mean that he can spend more time with Rin? For a moment, Obito's admiration for Rin overwhelmed his dislike for Kakashi, and he couldn't help but sigh. Alas, actually I didn't want everyone to know, it's all Kai's fault. Well, I did conduct special training to keep Kakashi in school. It's true. Seeing that Obito finally admitted it, Lin put her hands together and smiled warmly. Obito was encouraged by this and continued, and I paid a lot to get teacher Xia Yan to agree to help me with special training. And this is all because of that troublesome guy Kakashi. After all, although I don't get along with Kakashi, in my heart, I have always regarded him as my best friend. At this point, Obito still felt a little guilty, and nauseous. He looked around the classroom and made sure that Kakashi hadn't come yet, then he breathed a sigh of relief and continued, and if it was last semester, I could understand Kakashi wanting to graduate early. After all, ninja school is really boring. But since teacher Xia Yan came, life in ninja school has become so interesting. Lin nodded in agreement. As Obito's voice gradually became louder, many classmates gathered around curiously. Perhaps because he had been hanging out with Kai for too long, Obito had also awakened the attribute of being more excited when being watched by others, and said with a little excitement, new and interesting sealing techniques courses, projection stories, keening cards, and various extracurricular activities starting next semester, projection techniques teaching, new teaching aids, Guang, and these are just the changes that teacher Xia Yan has brought us in one semester. Who knows what kind of changes will happen to the ninja school in the next school year, and the school after the school year. I can guarantee that the life in the ninja school in the future will definitely not disappoint you. That's why I think it's a pity that Kakashi is graduating early now. Obito became more and more excited, and as he spoke, he felt that he believed it. Yes, there will be so many fun things in the ninja school in the future. If Kakashi is not there, it will indeed be a little less interesting. After all, he also wanted to see how Kakashi would react when he saw the projection story for the first time. And keening cards, it would be interesting if he could play a few games with Kakashi. Of course, more importantly, he wanted to see if Kakashi could still keep his cold expression after putting on the tights. Obito often helped in the sealing arts office in exchange for special training, so he knew more about the future reforms of the ninja school than other students. So even if it was just some information that did not need to be kept secret, it made everyone amazed and full of expectations for the future life in the ninja school. especially the after-school tutoring class, which made many students from civilian backgrounds excited, feeling that teacher Xia Yan was from the same background as them and knew their difficulties. And it seems that not only the sealing arts class, but also other courses will have corresponding teaching aids to assist teaching, which makes everyone curious and looking forward to it. After hearing what Obito said, everyone also felt that it was a pity for Kakashi to graduate so early. Perhaps the arrival of teacher Xia Yan will become an important turning point in the ninja school. Students who graduate early before this will be called geniuses, and those who choose to graduate early after this will only be laughed at as fools. Kakashi, you don't want to be a fool who graduates at the age of 5, right? Just when Obito was speaking eloquently, integrating the experience of a semester of storytelling, and was about to touch the threshold of the legendary mouth-to-mouth, he suddenly found that the originally lively scene began to cool down, and, why is everyone looking behind me? Obito subconsciously turned his head and looked back, and then he froze. Because he saw that Kakashi had already walked into the classroom, walked to his seat and sat down with an expressionless face. It was as if he didn't pay any attention to what was happening on this side. But since Kakashi came, Obito's speech naturally couldn't continue. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a loud conspiracy? Just then, the bell rang, and the teacher came. Everyone went back to their seats and sat down, pretending nothing happened. And Kakashi still held his chin and looked out the window. It was just through the reflection of the window that he saw Obito limping to his seat with a cane. This idiot. Although Kakashi came to the classroom just before class, he actually ran into Kai during his morning run today, and he was given a lot of information that he couldn't complain about. Did Obito go to special training to keep him? Kakashi subconsciously didn't believe it. After all, this guy and he have always been at odds, and he should be happy not to see him in the future. But he listened at the door for a while before entering the classroom, and his thoughts began to change. A fool who graduated at the age of 5? To be honest, after hearing Obito mention so many changes in the future ninja school, Kakashi also had the idea of graduating a year later. But he quickly gave up this idea. After all, the reforms that Obito mentioned were actually mostly to take care of students from civilian backgrounds and improve everyone's bottom line, which was actually not very useful to him. But Kakashi also felt from Obito's words that he really wanted him to stay in school, and his heart was slightly warmed. It seems that Obito usually deliberately goes against him, but in fact he is just interacting with him in his own way. This made Kakashi couldn't help but think that some boys would also deliberately tease the girls they like in order to attract the attention of the girls they like. It seems something is still wrong. The first year class A spent the day in this somewhat weird atmosphere, leaving the teachers in class a little confused. After school, Kakashi left the school as usual, ready to go home for training. But when he was about to walk out of the school gate, a limping figure caught his eye. Stupid Obito. He was seen leaning on a crutch in one hand and holding an object similar to a training doll in the other, walking towards the grove behind the school. Kakashi didn't want to pay attention, but at a glance, he was a little concerned about the white hair on the head of the training doll. So he flashed and secretly followed the defenseless stupid Obito. After Obito entered the grove, Kakashi went around to the front and found a convenient position for observation, and finally saw the appearance of the training doll. Sure enough, this doll was different from the usual one, with a thick head of white hair on its head. What made Kakashi even more speechless was that the doll was wearing the same mask as him. Upon closer inspection, Kakashi discovered that the doll's clothes and shoes were exactly the same as his usual clothes. Obito, what on earth does this guy want to do with a doll that looks like me? Chapter 100 Taboo Moves. I heard that all the Uchiha clan members were mentally ill, but Kakashi didn't believe it before, thinking that it was a slander against them. After all, Obito, except for being a little stupid, a little dumb, and a little foolish, looked quite normal. But now it seems that this guy is indeed a little abnormal. After all, normal people would at most put the other party's name or photo on the training puppets as imaginary enemies. How could they be so particular? Thinking of Obito actually treating him as his best friend, Kakashi couldn't help but shudder and felt a little nauseous. This friendship is too heavy. Not long after, Kakashi, who was quietly following from the tree, saw Obito walking deep into the grove and stopped under a crooked tree with a rope hanging on it. He first looked around to make sure that there was no one around, and then used the rope to hang the puppet up. Then Obito threw away his crutches, barely stood up, and began to move his body, as if he was doing warm-up exercises. This guy was injured yesterday, but he continued to practice today. Kakashi, who was hiding in the tree and peeking, raised his eyebrows slightly, and felt a little emotional. Sure enough, Obito has become stronger recently, and even defeated Honkazu, and there is a reason. In addition to the guidance of the sealing technique teacher, his own efforts are also indispensable. Then Kakashi realized that the puppet was just used as a training target, and was not used by Obito in strange places. This made him finally relieved. And from the rope left on the tree, it seems that Obito has been training here for a while. Thinking of Obito's childish plan to defeat him and let himself stay in school, Kakashi felt a little complicated. This idiot actually went to this extent for meaningless emotions. Obviously, Article 25 of the Ninja Code states that as a ninja, you cannot show emotions under any circumstances, but Kakashi thought again. But Obito has indeed become stronger because of this. Could it be that what the Ninja Code says is not necessarily completely correct? Then the man who broke the rules, maybe? Kakashi shook his head violently, throwing all kinds of distracting thoughts out of his mind, and his eyes became cold again. But this time, there was still a spark of fighting spirit in the depths of his eyes. After all, ninjas still have to rely on strength to communicate. Since Obito wants to defeat me, very good, let's see who is more powerful, him who is obsessed with emotions, or me who has decided to abandon all emotions. For a moment, Kakashi's fighting spirit boiled, and he finally took Obito's challenge seriously, and regarded him as an equal opponent. To be honest, he couldn't wait for the day to fight with Obito. After a while, Obito had finished exercising his body and limped to the Kakashi doll hanging in the air. Seeing that Obito was about to start formal training, Kakashi was also ready to leave. Although it is a common thing for ninjas to spy on the opponent's intelligence, if they're spied on, they can only blame themselves for their poor academic performance, and can't blame the opponent for being shameless. But Kakashi already regarded Obito as a worthy opponent, so he wanted to have a fair fight with him. Anyway, he would not lose, and continuing to watch would only stain the future battle. So Kakashi turned around and prepared to leave quietly. But at this moment, Obito's loud voice suddenly sounded behind him. The secret of Konohagaku's physical technique, ! The familiar words made Kakashi subconsciously turn his head and see a scene that shocked him. Obito made a tiger seal with both hands and stabbed the Kakashi puppet from behind. 1000-year kill. Seeing the puppet that looked like him being killed by Obito's 1000-year kill, Kakashi couldn't help but tighten his nose, and then his face turned terribly black, and his teeth were clenched. Obito, this super invincible bastard, what kind of technique is he practicing with my puppet? Time temporarily returned to noon that day. During the lunch break, Obito and Kai were going to the sealing technique office to ask teacher Xia Yan about the new tactical arrangement and why Kai had to tell them about the challenge. But they were intercepted by teacher Xia Yan, who had anticipated this, and took them to the rooftop. Information is the life of a ninja. Xia Yan started with a phrase he loved to say. According to my plan, by the end of the semester, Obito should be able to use the dark gymnastics once, which could be used as a trump card to defeat Kakashi. However, because of your sudden impulse, in order to win the sparring match in the physical training class, you exposed this trump card to Kakashi. Kakashi was on guard, so the effect of this move was naturally greatly reduced. Not to mention that you were injured, and I don't know if you can really practice this move in time. So I have to change the battle plan a little bit. Obito felt a little ashamed when he heard this. It turned out that the teacher had arranged everything for him a long time ago, but he messed up his plan just to show off. And Kai asked curiously, "Teacher, what is the new plan?" Xia Yan explained with a smile. Although hiding the information, the tactic of catching Kakashi off guard at the beginning may be difficult to work. But in addition to hiding information, ninjas can actually confuse their opponents by creating false information. For example, a ninja who is good at wind escape and water escape may create an image that he is only good at wind escape. When someone uses fire escape to target him, he will use water escape to give the other party a surprise. If Kakashi fights Obito now, he will naturally be very wary of your dark gymnastics, so we need to use more eye-catching moves to divert his attention to other directions before we can create an opportunity to take advantage of. And announcing the news that you are going to challenge him is the first step to attract his attention. Then the second step, Xia Yan said with a serious expression. Next, I will teach you, Obito, a forbidden move. You two must remember not to tell others that I taught you, not even the members of the research team, or even Kushina. Seeing their teacher so serious, Obito and Kai looked at each other and nodded vigorously in agreement, feeling nervous and excited. You know, when their teacher taught them dark gymnastics, it was not so serious, and it was even prefixed with taboo. Kai even thought, could this be a forbidden technique that can be on par with his father's 8 gates? Kai was not wrong to a certain extent. It's just that one comes at the cost of physiological death, and the other comes at the cost of social death. Because Xia Yan then said, "The moves I am going to teach you are the secret techniques of Konoha Gaku created by Konoha White Fang, the 1,000 years of killing." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.